All right, welcome to the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about Brock Purdy and the 49ers and how the Niners' identity has changed forever, all because of Brock Purdy. Dieter's in the house. Let's go. All right, we get it rolling on the Krug Show. Hope everybody's having a great Thursday night. Welcome to October the 3rd, 2024. And all I can say is it's hot. It's hot.
I'm in the city. You're in your garage. I mean, there's a big difference there.
Yeah. You're in an air-conditioned office building in downtown San Francisco where your only fear is the fear that you have to have walking to your car. I might as well be sitting in Qatar right now because I'm in my garage on a 100-degree day. And I would say even with the swamp cooler, the fans, the door.
Are we referring to your ass there with the swamp cooler?
No, but I mean, it's got to be 90 degrees. It's got to be 90 degrees.
No doubt. No doubt.
It's probably more like 75, but
I'm wearing a sweatshirt, Larry, and honestly, I'm a little cold.
Well, this has been quite the day. Man, we started early. We, have done a lot of stuff today. I've been on KMBR today. I stopped by. I taped a segment with Adam for his Stanford show. I did the Niners Nightly show. We had a nice little hour there as you're leading. It's funny. I'm like, you're kind of the, I'm the Oreo on both sides, and you're the stuffing in the middle there. Because I mean, I led into you. I led into you on KMBR, and then on the tail end of your Buster Posey's gonna suck. I can't believe I had to drive 50 miles listening to Buster Posey's gonna suck.
It was only for about 90 minutes of the 2-hour show.
And then I was really disappointed because you put together this awesome, compelling, strong argument, and then you welcome in JD from the islands, and he disagrees with you, and you're like, gave no resistance. You're like, all right, okay.
Because
well, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right, JD.
No, because I mean, it was. I felt
like I was watching the vice presidential debate. You guys were so cozy.
I'll be Tim Walz to JD's JD Vance. That's a fine win for me.
You're a knucklehead sometimes, right?
Totally. And I love going to Menards. It's listen, JD and I work well together when we do work together because JD is always, I know he's thinking it out. Like the thing that bothers me is when people don't think things out. I don't care if you have a differing opinion. It's an opinion. Like, what are we talking about here? What bothers me is when people are just going on spec or they're wish casting. And JD is like, well, I'm not going to judge until now JD's brilliance is that while I am immediately shooting from the hip, no matter what happens, here it comes. I got an opinion on it, and we'll change the opinion when facts change. But as the facts lie now, here's the opinion. JD is always waiting for the next thing, so he never has to fully formulate a strong opinion. It's an incredible move. Nothing but respect to the man. We did a radio show together for 2 weeks straight. We rarely disagreed, but we always had different viewpoints. God damn it, we need civility in this country, Larry, and we need it in sports talk more than ever.
I did hear those 2 weeks leading into Farhan's final trade deadline, which he once again overpromised and underdelivered. We'll talk a little baseball before we get out of here. But this, of course, people have come here in number because they want to they want to hear us talk Niners, and we're off and running here talking Niners, but we've yet to get into it.
What do we need to say our sponsors here, Larry?
Well, we do. And we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get the brisket chili. It's all wonderful, but I love the brisket and the brisket chili. Go say hi to them. Tell them that Krug sent you. Get some brisket chili. And then, of course, we're brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, on the Monterey Peninsula. Call my friend Anthony Catania. who will be at the game this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
831-521-5264 for all your sports cards and collectible needs. And, of course, how could we possibly leave out Better? This live stream sponsored by Better, Dieter, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups, and you can win real money. I've done it. I've actually done it. I've won. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, NINERS, to get your first deposit matched up to $200. All right, let's start where I want to start tonight. I don't like repeating myself, but I'm going to start tonight where I started.
Could you not, Larry? You've been talking 49ers football since 7 a.m.
I know, seriously. And you're bound to repeat yourself if you get into it a little bit. But I started the Niners Nightly tonight talking about Brock.
Yeah.
And I asked Brock a question today at the presser about a play. And it's a little self-serving because I know that Kev can turn that into something that becomes really, really good content.
Yes.
And what do I define as really good content? When you can get insights into the play and then kind of see the play on the all 22. I think that's kind of cool. I mean, to me, that is.
That's the grail, right? Like the reason that we talk to these, we have opinions, right? Okay. And we're smart guys. We study the game. We're trying. These guys are living it. This is their professions. These are their careers. And the vast majority of them, I have no problem saying, are geniuses at this stuff. They couldn't have made it this far without an incredibly high level of intellect towards the game that they play. So I'm always, even though I don't think I'm an idiot when it comes to this stuff, I'm always trying to play the idiot when it comes to this stuff. Explain this to me. Give us the insight. Take us in there. That's the grail, because now we can all understand football better because they're giving us these nuggets. Just a little bit of their understanding goes a long way for guys like us and hopefully the audience as well.
Exactly. And, sometimes you'll see somebody break something down and you'll be like, wow, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
And I want to break that down. Hold on a second here. I'm on screens I don't want to be on. I've got, I'm all over the map here. What in the heck
are all the computers in that room just saying, now we're done. Now we've been in this garage. It's 123 degrees outside. We didn't sign up to live in Phoenix. We're quitting.
I simply wanted to get, there it is. Chase Daniel. Daniel did a nice little breakdown today.
MIZ, baby.
Are you? That's right. You're a Chase Daniel guy?
I was there when Chase Daniel was the quarterback. Chase Daniel is a god. He's like Rip Taylor in our house. Shout out Wayne.
He's really smart. I mean, the guy never played basically in the NFL, and yet he made like $41 million.
Well, it's because he was the best dude ever. And I can attest that that's not fake. You can't fake it that long. He was a great dude at Mizzou. He had time for everybody. He was the best. He was pounding beers on campus. I can tell you that firsthand. Heisman Trophy finalist twice. And really high level understanding of the game. But his genius is in being able to relate it in a simple manner. He would have made a great coach, legitimately, because he's been that for many years, in essence, right? He was always the guy that teams would bring in when they had a young quarterback. They wanted to play the young quarterback, but they got to bring him along a little bit. They'd have Chase Daniel in the room as the quasi-quarterbacks coach. I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't been a quarterbacks coach somewhere, a la Brian Greasy, but I'm very happy he's doing media, and I'm happy that his star is on the rise, because every time he talks, I'm going to listen. I'm a Missouri Tiger. We're simpatico in that regard. But also, he's making everyone else smarter too. Chase Daniel's the best. You won't get a bad word from me, and this is a great breakdown. I've seen it before.
Okay, so we're not going to play the whole thing because it's like long. But I'm going to give you like a good 60 seconds of this. Here's Chase Daniel breaking down the fifth play of the game when Brock Purdy found Brandon Ayuk on a crosser. And I asked Brock about it, and we're going to play you his cut. But here, we'll just listen to 60 seconds of Chase on his breakdowns. Pretty good, pretty great stuff.
Brock Purdy, I think he's playing better this year than he was last year. Just doesn't have a bunch of weapons. Look, Kittle's back. And I'm excited to watch this. Like, the New England Patriots made Brock Purdy beat them. And they drop back in this too high coverage look quite a bit. We're going to break it all down. Kyle Shanahan was masterclass right here. All right, you got a motion, and then you got this pre-shift. I just love how they're doing this. They're blocking down so Kittle doesn't have to do the end, block the linebacker, defensive end, whatever you want to call it. They're pulling the guard, and then on the snap, Juice is going too. So you get 4 hands on one guy. Really hadn't seen this protection before, but it also just helps Kittle stick right there in protection just enough. And then what do you know? Wide open. I think that's Brandon Ayuk getting going. Sure looks a little bit slow to me. Missed all of camp.
Yep.
He's getting his legs back under him. When he gets back, and look, I think Jennings is the best number 3 receiver in all of football. I think it's going to be really scary, but just one of these perfect touch throws, like wide open, cover 2, 21 personnel, tight splits. It's just classic, like dagger or like deep over with a post clear out. And you're just reading that, right? If the free safety were to jump down, you're going to hit the post over top. But I thought this is cool because they're starting to do this more drop to the left. Watch what it does to these backers. The backers open this way because usually what happens when a quarterback goes out to his left, you're necketing out there, and these backers are going to turn this way because most of these routes are coming this way. So what does Shanahan do? Sees them, okay, uses it to their advantage because they went this way, and then you're bringing someone that way. So it's genius. Seeing more and more teams do it. Look at 48, Tavai. Just watch him the whole time and what it does. So you got this right here on the jet sweep. You have guard and Juice pull. And watch how lost he gets right there. It's pretty amazing. Once again, an amazing play for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel's back.
I'm going to pause this for a second. Now they show it from the end zone.
Yeah, it's a great cover 2 beater.
And you can see this. I really think, this is the part when you watch it from the end zone, you get a real feel for what Jelani Tavai 48 here is seeing. So let's run this
under
again.
The microscope, Kyle Shanahan.
Because this guy 48 is the guy that Purdy is staring at. Look, he's staring at him right now.
It's the mic.
And he's reading him. He's reading him. And when I asked him about it, he would tell me about it. But here, before we play that, here is the end zone of the same play.
Love it.
Watch him spin.
This right here. So you got all 3 guys tight.
You got a lot of east-west motion
here. Motion over Kittle. Okay, so you get into a true 3-4 look. Okay, Juice is just watching. He's going to go, and then you're pulling.
See, so just to pause this right here, Dieter, if you're the defense and you're just trying to guess what's coming, this is very much a strong run to the left. Look, you got the tight end on this side of the formation. You got the fullback coming in motion to the same side. So the linebackers are seeing this, and they're reading
pitch left.
They're thinking exactly. They're thinking pitch left, and unfortunately,
and by the way, especially too, because Pooney's going to pull. Right, you're running power. Like, who the fuck passes off of power?
Right. And it's such a we talk about the conflict defender.
Yeah.
Jelani Tavai is a terrific player. He had 10 tackles, I think, the week before. He is a very good player, but Kyle puts him, he's a young player who's only playing because Jawan Bentley is out for the year. Otherwise, Bentley's starting here, and this kid's on the bench. So here we go.
By the way, Bentley's going to get tossed up too, and you've already seen by bringing Kittle to the left side here, they're not having to switch responsibilities between the weak and the Mike linebacker. That's what Tavai is doing here. He's switching responsibilities because they're worried about Juice. But now Juice is going to come in motion, and then that's going to mess him up even more. And you can just see, I mean, there's a pirouette. Because it's like, well, do I have what I just got shifted onto or the original? It's an entirely different play. This is why motion is so devastating, on top of then the play itself, which is counter to a lot of the rules of the defense. And again, this is a simple defense that they're running. It's a 3-4 cover 2. You can see that when you get, on the original thing with the corner, he's just playing in the flat area. He's just covering that area. Cover 2 too high. That's what you run when you think the run is coming, as you alluded to earlier. This is the kind of stuff that when it happens in a game, you go, oh, there's a lot of movement, but you don't realize how devilish it is from Kyle Shanahan's viewpoint. So credit to Chase.
Count the false steps too by Tavai here. Here we go.
Oh, good call.
You have Deebo Samuel in the backfield. There's just a lot to go on. Two guys pulling. Deebo's there. I think that's Jelani Tavai right there. Is lost. Everyone goes
now.
This
He's
way
turning his back on the quarterback.
What does Shanahan do?
He's got to turn and
we're
run.
Gonna go back that way. Just genius play. Play 5 of the game to get.
And if you pause this right here, there's nobody over here. Nobody. It's like you've got
100% plays into Chase Daniel's statement. And I think you and I have both noted it too, that Ayuk's looking slow, right? That should be another 20 yards. He should be at the 30-yard line by the time this is done, because he should be able to get to the sideline, and then this safety, I think it's Duggar, who was still in the game at the time, will cut him off, right? Like, that's going to happen. You're calling that. Duggar's a great player. But look at Peppers. I'm sorry, you can't see where I'm pointing, but Peppers bottom right of the screen here. That's your safety. 5. That was, by the way, that guy's now coming in to cover the flat. Like, that's who would have been one-on-one on Deebo. So if Deebo gets up the field, Peppers is probably spinning too, as good of a player as Peppers is. It's a devilish play. This is good stuff.
Here's the rest of it.
Get Ayuk going early in this
so he
game,
gets to the 30 roughly. He does get to the 30.
He's going to be a problem. All right,
he got to the 40.
See what they're playing. Looks
okay,
like
so that was the only that was the play I wanted to show.
That's good stuff.
There. And I like Chase Daniel's breakdown. I know he's not as smooth as some of the other people who break it down, but he's got the credibility. That's for sure.
I'll stick with him if he ain't that smooth.
And now let's go to Brock Purdy, because I went and asked Brock Purdy about this play. And now we're going to bring this play to life from Brock's perspective. And I thought this was interesting stuff. And then, of course, Kev put together this great little reel that is fantastic, where you got the play up top, and then you got Brock in the bottom talking. Here's Brock illustrating what he was seeing on this play.
Early in the game, you hit Brandon on a crosser. It's kind of a deep cross, so it's like 5th play. And the route combination seemed really to make him wide open. What did you anticipate when you were going through that play the night before, and did it shake out the way you thought it would?
Yeah, I mean, they had 2 safeties split deep. They played cover 2. We had a guy on the outside running off a corner and a safety, and then all BA had to do was clear this Mike linebacker going deep in the middle of the field. And so as I'm dropping back, going through my read, I'm like, all right, we got this. If I can get this ball out in front and BA cross that linebacker, we should be good. And so, the night before, we have our set of plays that we're going to try to run in the beginning of the game. And I just try to go through every scenario with coverages and stuff of what's my answer if I get this coverage or that. And so with cover 2 on that play, I was like, all right, if we get this, I just got to get enough time for BA to cross field, and it should be there. And sure enough, it was. So.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we'll leave that away now. We'll put that away. But I mean, I really love producing that kind of content where, where you can ask about a particular play. Now, Brock plays along exceptionally, Dieter, because he's got great recall on all these plays. I didn't give him a note 10 minutes before the presser saying, hey, Brock, I know there were 68 plays in the game this weekend, but I'm going to ask you about offensive play number 5. It was a deep crosser against this cover. He just knows it. He knows the coverage. He knows the route combination. He knows for every play in the entire game. If you asked him, if you picked a different play in the 3rd quarter, he would have known that coverage. If I picked a second play in the 4th quarter, he would have known that coverage. My point is just that I'm not saying Brock Purdy is the Rain Man, and I'm not trying to pretend like he is, special beyond special. All NFL quarterbacks, for the most part, not all, but a high percentage,
should be able to do this.
They should be able to do this. This is their job, and they should know it like the back of their hand. Yeah. But you can just tell by the things that he says that he has to find an answer for every possible wrinkle that could come about on every single play. And he's done the mental reps to go through each play. And then like even just today in practice, Peter, they were doing this drill, and Brock and the other quarterbacks, they were looking to the left side of the field, and they had a flood on that side. They had a receiver short, and they had a receiver, let's say a flat corner. We just had a typical flat corner, and you had Greasy pretending to be the corner, the boundary corner, right?
Okay.
And so you can tell, and I couldn't hear exactly what Greasy was saying, but based on his posture and his slight movement, they want the quarterback to make a quick decision at the snap of corner, flat, all based off of the posture and the placement of the corner.
Yeah.
On the play.
On the leverage. You want to read the cornerback's leverage on the play, and based on if they're giving outside or inside leverage and based on their depth on the field, that's your determination on if you're going deeper, if you're going short. You're taking one guy, and this is the beauty of a flood route, especially in a cover 2 league that we're playing in currently, especially in a cover 1 league, but even so in a cover 2 league. You want to have one guy, whether it be a linebacker in the play that Chase Daniel just broke down and as Brock eloquently explained to us, and then also, you want to have one guy who has to do 2 things. So that's what they're doing there. Sometimes it's the corner, sometimes it's a defensive end if you have a running quarterback. Most of the time it's the linebacker in a Kyle Shanahan system, but it's interesting. That's really interesting that they're doing that there, because it also highlights how much of the 49ers passing game now, after years and years of everything being in between the numbers, now they're putting dudes outside the numbers in conflict. They did it obviously in the run game in week 1 by just running at Sauce Gardner again and again and again. That's a different kind of conflict. That's a hat on a hat conflict. This is, here are your rules, and we're going to exploit your rules to our benefit by giving you 2 things that you have to do at one time, and you got to pick one. And Brock Purdy is going to be staring you down the whole time, waiting for that to happen. And the beauty of Brock is, if something isn't quite right, he can get off of that read. Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't do that. Trey Lance couldn't do that.
Yeah, Jimmy
Kyle
really
gave him the
couldn't do
cheat
it.
codes, and he would say, "Oh, it didn't go out perfectly, so this play is broken." By the way, like Kirk Cousins will do that at times still, and Kirk Cousins is the computer, right? I think back a lot to Matt Barrows did an incredible, and it was fortuitously timed. He did an incredible thing where he had campaigned for years to be in the locker room at halftime during a Niners game. He wanted to know what happened in those 13 minutes, because we always talk about halftime adjustments. That's not a lot of time. It takes 3 minutes to get to the locker room if you're running. So how much can you really do in that period of time? And Barrows was in that locker room for the Dolphins game that Brock Purdy was in. They bring Brock Purdy into that game, and Kyle threw, I believe it was 3, it could have been more, plays that Brock Purdy had never practiced before. He threw 3 new plays at Brock Purdy at halftime of his first NFL game, and Purdy had them down, and they called 2 of them in the second half, and they were perfectly executed. When everyone goes on and on about, you think back to the initial conceit of the 49ers front office. They were going to wait a year and get Kirk. So they didn't draft. They didn't even look at Mahomes that much. They didn't look at Deshaun Watson. That worked out. They didn't do any of this stuff. And then Jimmy shows up, and they just sort of took him because, well, I don't know if we're going to get Kirk. They're probably not going to let Kirk. All this. The reason that they wanted Kirk Cousins, as uninspiring, though he did throw for 500 yards today, as uninspiring as Kirk Cousins is because the quarterback in a Kyle Shanahan offense, whether it's Matt Ryan or whether certainly not Johnny Manziel or whomever he had, all those randos that he had in Houston making Matt Schwab a Pro Bowler, they have to be the offensive coordinator. They have to understand this stuff at Kyle's level. And in fact, they need to be able to think quicker because they're on the field in the line of fire. They're the ones who can die if they get this thing wrong.
I guess the point is as Greasy was doing this, and Blood Moon says, Larry, what were you going to say about Greasy? What was he doing in practice?
Yeah.
He was just giving different corner postures. Sometimes he was literally up. Sometimes he was looking at the quarterback, but peeking back. Sometimes he was 3-4 yards off the line. He gave his quarterbacks a bunch of different looks.
That's
and
awesome.
You could tell based on his posture and his positioning, he wanted them to make a quick, like right now decision. I'm looking over here. I'm going to the flat, or I'm going to the flat, or I'm going to the corner. Flat corner. And I was going to ask Brock about it today, but I ran out of time. But I would like to ask him about that. If that,
probably
because
get him tomorrow about it.
He does go through his progressions really, really fast. Jimmy was, Greg Cosell used to say all the time to me, Jimmy's not a good late in the down thrower. And that's kind of like, people who want to say a baseball player sucks in the 70s or 80s would be like, he sucks. He strikes out too much.
Yeah.
And that has evolved into, there's a little bit too much swing and miss in his game. Yeah. It sounds so much better and more diplomatic than he sucks.
Yes.
He can't hit. He strikes out. There's a little bit too much swing and miss in his game.
Well,
so
when
when
so much
Greg's saying
in the sport, right?
He's a great late. He's not a great late in the down thrower. What he's basically saying is
Can't see
Kyle's a great offensive coordinator. He calls a great play. If Jimmy carries out the first read on that play, he's okay. If not, he's screwed. I mean, that's basically what he's saying.
I called him one read Jimmy for 5 straight years. I got in a lot of trouble on this station for calling him one read Jimmy. You show me the time where he got to his second. I mean, it's I hate to go in on Jimmy Garoppolo because at this point, we all know it's obvious now. I'm a little salty about, being on the right side of history and not getting any credit. But that's me. That's my personal issues. For the 49ers, it's not just that Brock has the ability to process all of this. And we've talked a million times over, and it's almost to the point of cliche. He's such a great processor. Well, this is what we're talking about. This is not easy stuff. And yes, it should be a prerequisite to be a quarterback in the NFL. You'd be surprised. The 49ers went to a Super Bowl with a guy who couldn't do this stuff because Kyle Shanahan was scheming him up that well. You think about what Tua Tagovailoa gets in Miami. You don't think Mike McDaniel is doing the same thing? You ever seen Tua get to a second read? I mean, he's just the Hawaiian Jimmy.
I think Tua doesn't read coverage.
Correct. And
I think
Brock
Tua's
is not
gonna.
just.
I think Tua's been found out. I'd be shocked if Tua Tagovailoa's career goes anywhere from here.
I mean, and obviously there's the health concerns and stuff like that. But the point is not only is Brock Purdy operating at this level mentally, and by the way, not new. This is par for the course now. He came in with this. It's gotten better with experience, but this is the kind of operator he's always been. But he's also very physically gifted. He throws a really nice ball. Is it the nicest? Hell no. Does it have the most zip? Of course not. But he's accurate. He's pretty damn accurate. He delivers the ball where it needs to be delivered with the pace that it needs to be delivered with consistently. And he can make plays with his feet. I'm not really sure what more you want from a quarterback outside of the Josh Allen school, which is why don't we just put the biggest, baddest dude at the position and figure out what's going on from there? Which, by the way, when you have a head coach like Kyle Shanahan, I guess it could be fun, but that's not really how they operate. They are surgeons, and a guy like Josh Allen, as good as he is, I'm not taking anything away from Josh Allen's intellect or his ability to read the field or anything like that, but Josh Allen is a battering ram. Cam Newton is a battering ram. And yes, they have the requisite intelligence and ability to read the field and all that stuff, but Kyle Shanahan's looking to remove your kidneys without you knowing it. And these other guys, these incredible physically gifted athletes on another level, they're out here trying to bust down your door with a battering ram in one shot. And it's too nuanced for you and I. I mean, maybe I won't speak for you, but for me to pick up in the moment most of the time, I don't think it would ever translate on a Fox or a CBS broadcast. Now, if you get the all 22 live on a Thursday Night Football, maybe it screams a little bit louder. But this is some really good stuff. It's really good stuff. And credit to Chase Daniel for being able to spot it. And this is why you don't even bat an eye about paying Brock Purdy $60 million, because what more could you want? He can't get any bigger. So this is what you got, and it's awesome.
Seriously. Oh, the guy's skill set is tremendous. By the way, you kind of led me towards a different thought, but
let's do it.
I don't know if you watch all the bowl games or if you're not anti-bowl game.
Oh,
but
no,
this year I stumbled onto a game for gambling purposes because I wanted to bet Toledo, and they got into a game with Wyoming, I believe.
Jason Candle.
And it happened to be the Barstool Bowl.
Yes.
And I stumbled
on Twitter and you came across the Barstool Bowl. I think that's where it was broadcast.
No, it was on TV. It was on TV.
Really?
Yeah, and the announcer was just some some regular announcer. I don't remember
Excuse
who it
me,
was.
I have a name, sir. I was calling the Barstool.
and then a guy named Big Cat
Yes.
he was on there, and I think Portnoy was on there. It was
wow.
a 3-man booth with Portnoy, Big Cat, and whoever their generic play-by-play guy was. But it hit me in watching it. I'm like, this, I mean, it wasn't your typical broadcast.
No.
In fact, I would encourage anybody to go YouTube this and see if you could find it, because you probably could still find it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was different because, like, there was one play where the ball got tipped into the air and an offensive lineman grabbed it or defensive lineman grabbed it and started running the other way and scored a touchdown, and they got called back. But these guys were like, a fat guy touchdown. And they were calling it like they were just sitting in a bar, because it was Barstool. It wasn't a regular broadcast. But you know what? I'm watching it and I'm going, this is strange. And it was departure from what I'm used to, but it kind of hit me. I'm like, you know what? This is entertaining. Yeah. And I would love to see a thing where in the future you could have different broadcasts. Like, if you want to get the Chase Daniel, you want to know about the over route and the this and that and the all 22. I mean, what if you could actually watch an NFL game?
Yeah.
From an all 22 side, what the pros call sideline wide or end zone wide.
Right.
I mean,
or in the case of the Chicago Bears,
cool.
somewhere in the 100 level wide, because I hate their all 22 film.
I mean, but it would be cool. And then other people might not want that esoteric hardcore football, and maybe they just want, hey, the fat guy scored. Yeah. Hey, this guy scored. Hey, the guy with the blonde long hair out of his helmet scored.
Look at this.
Let's talk. Let's.
I'd like
play
a
grab ass about the
say,
cheerleaders.
Look at this fucker. Yeah, literally.
You know what I'm saying though? It's like to each their own. And I'm not. I like the all 22. I like the football breakdown. But guess what? I understand that probably more people like that other stuff.
And listen, this is the challenge of being on the CBS crew, right? You have to make it accessible to the masses, but you also have to appease your somewhat hardcore fans. And so you have to walk that line. You have to be a centrist. And this is why people responded early on to Tony Romo's shtick, which was, I'm excited and I'm going to predict what play is coming because I did the film study. Then that kind of wears off. This is why Tom Brady has been a disappointment, at least to me, because he doesn't want to criticize anybody. He's too afraid to do that. I'm not sure if he's allowed to do that based on NFL owner rules. That's a whole fun game.
He will be on Niners Cardinals, by the way.
And listen, and I'm glad that I don't have to watch it. But this is why I love Greg Olson, right? He will quickly break it down. Kirk Herbstreit actually does a really good job at this. Now, Kirk Herbstreit is a shell of a man at this point because he's completely overworked. That's a personal opinion. He obviously differs. I'm sure the money's very good. But he's really, and him and Troy Aikman in particular, are very, very good at giving you the telestrator X's and O's breakdown immediately after. So, like, I've heard that Troy Aikman during a game on Monday Night Football or previously on the Fox broadcast isn't even watching the field. Once the play has started, he already knows what's going to happen. In theory, it's just a question of where the ball really did go. And he's already looking down at the screen for the blocking. He's already looking at this. He's got 3 screens. He's already looking for those things so that he can quickly draw it up. That's a really difficult skill. But I'm with you, especially in this era of streaming, when everything's going to be streaming here in the not too distant future, if it isn't already effectively that manner. Like, we should absolutely have multiple feeds on the Sunday Ticket. And they do this. This is what the Manning cast promised, and all it turned out was Eli picking on his brother's big forehead. So
it's the future. It's the future. I mean, if you go to the MLB At Bat app, you can right now go to the home radio, road radio, home TV, road TV. You got 4 options usually for most games.
Back NBA to Purdy does this a little bit. There's a couple of guys who do it. They have like a third feed, but it's like one game on a Tuesday. Like, it should be for everything, but then you get into, does the league want guys yelling fat guy touchdown? It's a whole thing.
Well, yeah, my point is just that we think of sports broadcasting as one thing, but eventually there may be more than one, feed, let's say.
Totally.
And guess what? It wouldn't shock me if what we would look at as kind of a whatever
The meathead feed. Yeah.
The meathead feed is going to win. It's going to
Totally.
win. And
Totally.
there's going to be some meathead moron who's probably going to get paid a shit ton of money just because he has a couple funny lines here and there. Anyway, I just think it's the future. Let's get to Brock Purdy for a second.
Let's do it.
Purdy, I think, is the big story with the Niners in the first month is that Brock Purdy's found a whole new level to get to.
Mm-hmm.
He leads the NFL in completions of 20+ yards. So much for the dink and dunk. He's got 18.
Yeah.
His average depth of target his first year was 7 yards. Last year it grew to 8.6 yards.
Mm-hmm.
This year it's 11 yards. Against New England, the average depth of target was 15 yards. So he's driving the ball further down the field.
Yeah.
His big time throws are up. He's 4th in the league. His turnover worthy plays are down. He's 20th in the league, or 10th, I guess you want to say, or out of 32 teams, he's had fewer turnover worthy plays than 19 quarterbacks have had more turnover worthy plays than him. Yeah. He's scrambling more, Dieter. He's extending plays more this year with his legs. His average time to throw is up 0.6 seconds because he's taking more time. He can win a bunch of different ways. He's first in yards per attempt. He owns a 112.6 QB rating through 25 games. It's the best 25-game QB rating in the history of the NFL.
Yep.
And since the start of 23, he's got better numbers than Mahomes. More passing yards, better touchdown to interception ratio, more touchdowns, fewer picks, better passer rating, better yards per attempt, all across the board better than Mahomes.
Yeah.
The Niners, you're seeing them. It's reflecting, despite the fact that Debo's been hurt, Kittle's been hurt, CMC is yet to play. The Niners offense is still second in total offense in yards.
Mm-hmm.
They're second in passing offense. They're first in time of possession. He's also doing this with a team that has the 8th most drops of any team in the league, and behind an offensive line that is, is bottom 3rd in pressure percentage allowed this season. So in a lot of ways, Brock Purdy, he's not being supported quite the same, but he himself has gotten better. And I guess the question I would have for you, Dieter, is if this is what it is, the special teams is bad and the defense is mid-pack,
mm-hmm.
Can Brock Purdy elevate himself in this offense to a championship caliber level where they can go back to the Super Bowl with instead of a great defense, a middle of the road defense and a bad special teams? Can it be done?
Yes, it can. To get to the Super Bowl. There's a whole other thing on winning the Super Bowl, as we've seen. This is MVP caliber play. Now, last year was MVP caliber play too, but it's clearly Brock this year, right? There's no Christian McCaffrey muddy in the waters on who the most effective and instinctive, incisive player on the offense is. It's Brock Purdy. And I have made the consistent comp that this is post big money Russell Wilson for the Seattle Seahawks. And people roll their eyes. I get that. I get it. He was the boogeyman for the 49ers for years. You don't want to hear that. But now the powers are being used for the 49ers' benefit. And it's so reminiscent. It's not 1-to-1, of course. But when you see Brock Purdy pushing the ball down the field the way he has in the last couple of games, when you see him extending plays the way that he's extended plays, I don't know how people don't see it. And say what you will about the big money Russell Wilson, and we know how it all turned out. That was a while down the road. And they never had a losing season with him, no matter how shitty the offensive line was, no matter how banged up the defense was. If he had Tyler Lockett and didn't matter, Travis Homer is the running back, they were going to win 9-10 games a year when they played 17 or when they played 16. They were always in the playoffs. They were always in the mix. Now, the flip side was they never played a normal game. And I would argue that the 49ers are very similar in that regard because special teams is so bad, because the defense feels like it's being held together by spit, bubble gum, and string. This is a team with weaknesses. This is what happens when you have a stars and scrubs roster. Injuries really expose some weaknesses, but a great quarterback covers those weaknesses up. Say what you will about Patrick Mahomes this year. Yes, the numbers are down. The Chiefs keep winning because for all the weaknesses the team has, Patrick Mahomes gets it done when it needs to get done. Now, credit to their defense as well. Great quarterbacks don't have big losing seasons. And that's what I see with Brock Purdy. The floor of this team has been raised significantly. And that's a huge thing for this 49ers squad because, let's be honest, early in the year, especially after those back-to-back losses, it felt like the rug could have gotten pulled out from them. And that's with Purdy playing well. With all the injuries piling up, and the injuries are still there, with the way the offensive line was playing, with the way the defense, it felt like things were kind of on the precipice of slipping out of control. And then they did not play a good game by their standards against the Patriots. And they still won 30-13 because their quarterback's that good and their head coach is that good. And when you look at the teams that are successful year in and year out in the NFL, the teams that are in the mix, maybe not the favorites every year, maybe not the betting odds, maybe not juggernauts, but the teams that are in the mix that are going to be talking about, hey, we got a shot at this thing when the calendar flips to January, they're the teams with the best head coaches and the best quarterbacks. And it's not a ipso facto thing. Well, oh, they made the playoffs, therefore they have a good head coach and a good quarterback. We're talking about consistent contention, head coach, quarterback, year after year. That's what the 49ers have. They're in really, really good stead. And of course, they also have a bunch of really good players around them for when, to the point of the previous commenter, we haven't seen anything close to the best they could theoretically play. They're rounding into form in the best case. And in the worst case, they're good enough to make the playoffs still on a season where everything's gone to hell. Because it's really been snake-bitten in a lot of ways to this point, and I think it will remain snake-bitten for the rest of it. And they're still going to win 9 or 10 games, be in the playoffs, and hey, who knows what happens from there, especially if guys get healthy. Very reminiscent of last year's, obviously the circumstances are different, but very reminiscent of last year, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. The Rams had no business being in the playoffs, but they had the good head coach, and they have the good quarterback, as good as you're going to get in the league. So where were they? In the playoffs. And I just think that that's the baseline for the 49ers here. Even if you do think that, hey, their window has closed, you can still open it. Whereas a lot of teams, their window's closed, and now you got to go 2-3 years before you even have a chance to crack that thing open again. Purdy's just elevated to a consistent MVP level. He's got to maintain it 4 games. You know, we're not going to write it in permanent marker here, but the way that he's doing it is not smoke and mirrors. This is the real deal. We know Kyle Shanahan's the real deal when it comes to scheming up his offensive plays and keeping a team together, which is hard enough to do as a head coach. I've never seen this locker room fracture. They're in really good stead. So can they get back to the Super Bowl? You bet their ass they can, especially this year, even with things not going all their way.
Well, and you know, you're not a Super Bowl contender if you don't have the head coach and you don't have the quarterback. They have both. Yeah. They have both.
No doubt.
Before we hit better, let's hit a couple of these. Anthony Catania. Hey, Anthony, he says the kid is brilliant.
He is.
And I don't think he's talking about Kev. I think he's talking about Brock. MF says Dieter was on NorCal Sports Network last night for 2 hours. Is that
That's
true?
factual. That's factual.
The great Dan Coach Emilio.
Yeah. He decided to soil his channel with my takes.
Talk a lot of Giants.
It was nothing but Giants. As you can imagine, I had plenty to say.
There you go. Andrew H. Larry, do you wear a catheter when you go live, when you're live all day long? Yes,
Depends.
I do. No, I do not. I do not wear a catheter. Oh my God. Yes, it's called Mr. Peabody. Mr. Irrelevant MC says Pearsall routes are going to be so nice, especially with Purdy hitting him in between the numbers.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that's going to give this offense another element for sure. And I will say this, you know, I mean, I don't know what to say about Pearsall. I don't want to belabor this point too much because it's his own business and what do I know about it? But the guy supposedly was shot. And I'm not saying I don't believe it. I do believe it. But I saw him walking around in the locker room with no shirt on. I don't see where the bullet entered or exited. I mean,
he does
Dieter,
have a lot of tattoos.
when I say this, I'm not saying, oh, you mean You're not seeing a gigantic bandage? No,
Yeah.
I'm saying
There's no
I've seen
scar.
him walking around without a shirt, and I don't see a bruise.
That's
I
wild.
don't see anything at all on his body that would make you think that he was shot. How could that possibly be? How?
Larry,
Can you
we're
explain
not
that to
23.
me?
We're not 23 years old. That's how.
But I mean,
It's wild.
if it
That's
really
wild.
did go through his body and out the other side of his,
That's wild.
wouldn't we see a cut, a scratch, a bruise? Dieter, I mean, I was in a park, 6 months ago with one of my kids, and I didn't see a rock, and I stumbled over this gigantic rock. I still have like cuts on my shins from that freaking rock. It was like literally like over a year ago. This guy was supposedly shot. There's not a mark anywhere on him. No mark on the chest, no mark on the back. Nothing.
I got to see it with my own eyes, Larry.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm happy.
They
but
call,
I'm also
they call it a miracle, but there's
that's it's amazing.
That's
it's
incredible.
Absolutely amazing.
That's incredible.
The other thing I would say is that I can't wait to see that kid play because I think he's going to be really good. I think he's got
Not
the ability
concerned
to
about
get
his
open.
toughness anymore.
I am concerned about his toughness. I mean, it's not toughness; it's more about durability. I'm concerned about his durability because he doesn't. I mean, doesn't look like he's got a big physical frame, and he's going to have to go across the middle. So I'm a little worried about his durability. A couple more here. Rakib Jumani says, "Great knowledge, gentlemen. Really enjoying tonight's show. The show tonight. Thank you.
We're
Rakib.
enjoying it too."
Jacob Gordon, you guys want some Camrys? Did you hear Brock when
I did. I bet he does have the hookup on Camrys. Also felt like a slight. Like they would only, I'll give you a Camry. You seem lame like that.
Hey, you guys want some Camrys?
You guys want some Camrys? He's handing them out. This guy's already got the $60 million in Camrys.
49ers _ throwback. Jonathan Gannon had nothing but praise for Brock. Well, he's smart.
Well, yeah.
Carlos Guido says, with the Niners playing on Thursday, I think it's very possible Kittle or Warner do not play. Maybe both don't. Lots of football condensed into a short time period. Yeah, it's 2 games in 12 days. What do you think? Do you think Warner and Kittle don't go?
Much. I'm very concerned, as much as we've been praising Brock, I'm very concerned if either one of them doesn't go. Because they have both proven themselves to be, obviously, at the caliber of player they are. This should go without saying, but particularly with this roster, they're irreplaceable. I was stunned that they played George in the second half. But we saw what it looked like when he's not out there. It's not just the blocking. It's the threat in the pass game. And when you have Saubert, you just don't have to treat him with respect in the pass game. And when you have Tongas, you don't have to treat him with respect in the run game. And the brilliance when you're talking about conflict and putting defenders in positions that they don't know what to do, well, a guy like a George Kittle, who obviously is a brilliant blocker and is a brilliant receiver, that's where the conflict comes from. What the fuck do I do? This guy can do anything. And when you are basically showing your hand or going opposite a team's player's skill set as to give sleight of hand, it gives the defense one less thing to have to worry about. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm immensely concerned if Fred doesn't play because he's been the best player in football for the first 4 weeks of the season. And we're not very thrilled with the 49ers defense with Fred Warner playing out of his absolute gourd right now. What happens if he's not there? I shudder to think.
Yeah. Aiden Hutchinson, by the way, got the defensive player of the month in the conference over Fred, but I thought Fred probably deserved it. Bazzi Mian says, what makes Brock more impressive besides the lack of weapons, injuries, is that teams now have a year of game film on him, and yet he's better.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's no secrets here. It's not like, oh, well, I've got the secret sauce. Oh, now you can shut down Brock. All right. This live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get that first deposit matched up to $200.
What do we got, Larry?
We are going to take a look at
See
some
how big my
props
head can
from
get
the
here.
Niner game, the Niner Cardinal game. Let's see what we got. Who you picked the player?
Let's go with Purdy. We've been talking about him enough. Let's see what the numbers are.
Okay. 264.5 passing yards, 2.5
number.
passing touchdowns.
That's
They
that.
had a 1.5 passing touchdown prop the other day, but now
The
it's just
respect
2.5.
from better over the top. Okay, I don't like any of those numbers with Purdy. I don't like that.
I don't like him either.
Jordan Mason.
Jordan Mason. Let's take. There's 5 different projections for Jordan
Now
Mason.
we're talking.
86.5 rushing yards, 100
Okay.
combined, 100.5, 11.5 receiving yards, 17.5 longest rush, 8.5 longest catch.
You know I like those longest rushes. He is a chunk play machine. When you break tackles in the open field, you get chunk yardage. I'm going over more than, I should say, 17.5, Lair.
I like that. I also kind of like the receiving yards. I feel like there's been a lot of talk this week about throwing the ball to Mason. So I like that one too. So let's go with longest rush over 17.5 or more than 17.5.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say let's go with the other one more than was it 11.5?
Yeah.
On the receiving.
How
All right,
about
let's
another guy we've been talking about, Brandon Ayuk.
Let's look at Ayuk. Go to
The numbers
Ayuk.
come down because at some point it has to break through, right?
60.5 receiving yards, 23.5 longest catch. That is every week where the longest catch sits with him, about 22.5, 23.5. I think
like
receiving yards.
Yeah, I like the over or the more.
Yeah, I think this is it. This is it. More than 60.5.
It's got to be this week. If it ain't this week, my God.
Let's go Trey McBride.
It's not
Thursday.
Thursday.
Trey McBride.
That's a good call.
McBride is another guy that's really, really good.
Oh boy.
I like the receiving yards over here. 45 is all he needs. I think he's going to have 60, 70 yards.
I mean, the problem
he's
is
so hard to stop.
The problem is Devondre Campbell will just commit pass interference, and those don't count as receiving yards. Ask Cody Parkinson.
Yeah.
I still like it. I'm with you. We're going more.
Yeah, we're going more. More than 44.5 receiving yards. All right, let's see what it looks like.
How much can we make, Larry?
Well, let's see. We're going to go 3 for 3. Let's bet 10 to win 50. We're going to get 5 to 1 odds. Let's do it.
Don't mind it.
There we go. This live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. Thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. Okay, let's hit a couple of these comments here.
Okay.
I think, or did we already do that?
Oh, we got to do some jerseys.
We did that. Yeah. We did that. We got that one. We got that one. We got that one. We got them all. Okay. Also, don't forget, we're giving a jersey away. Sign up, download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, NINERS, to get your first deposit matched up to $200. Everybody who signs up automatically is in a drawing to win a Niner jersey of your choice in your size, your number, whatever number you want. There you go. So sign up right now, and thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. I asked Kyle Shanahan a question yesterday, and he kind of paused because I think I asked him, I said, who is your running back 2?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like it was a tough question. Because I think in his mind, CMC is RB1 and Mason is RB2.
Right.
But obviously CMC hasn't played all year. So Mason is your de facto RB1. So is it Garendo, who has 7 carries? Is it Patrick Taylor, who has no carries? Mm-hmm. I really think that in reality, the Niners depth chart is completely upside down at running back after JP Mason. Mason is the starter. Everybody knows that.
As well he should be.
He's not sharing the load. He is the entire load. So he's the guy. if he were to get hurt,
Right.
Guerrero is the next guy up and Taylor's the next guy after that. And then theoretically, if those guys all got hurt, then it would be time for Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah.
I personally don't really believe that this is the depth chart. I think this is the depth chart of convenience. I think the depth chart in reality is JP Mason is the one and Keyshawn Vaughn is the two. And Taylor's probably the three and Guerendo's probably the four. I don't think if tomorrow you got into the game and Mason got hurt, they would share with the guys who are up. But the very next week, I don't believe Guerendo's your starting running back. I don't believe Patrick Taylor's your starting running back. I think they would skip over those guys and go right to Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, I maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong.
Well, the fact that that's a terribly reasonable thought speaks to how unimpressive Guerendo has been as a runner of the football so far. And say what you will about Taylor, he did get some carries for the Packers last year. He looks slow, but he looks like he reads the field pretty well. And especially near the goal line or in short yardage situations, that's who you should be giving the ball to. So I think it'd be more of a committee, to be sure. I don't think that they would maintain the workload of a Christian McCaffrey or clearly a JP Mason, and they would mix it up. But I'm with you that Vaughn would absolutely be in that mix should Mason miss a game with CMC being out. There's also the element of Deebo Samuel here. And not to piggyback, but I also asked Kyle Shanahan a question about when they're in the red zone, and we saw the red zone offense look pretty shaky, particularly against the Patriots early, and obviously in week 1. They have a real issue, and this is something that Christian McCaffrey solved for them, and they never really had to work beyond this. When you have Christian McCaffrey in your backfield and you are in the red zone, particularly the deep red zone, you're forcing teams to play man-to-man because Christian McCaffrey can catch the ball out of the backfield. And teams want to play zone in the red zone because there's less space to cover. So zone is easier, and it's muddy. And why do the complicated hard thing where you can get beat one-on-one if you can just play zone? Well, you can't play zone with Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield. You can't do it because he'll burn you every time. That's where the ball is going to go if it's in man-to-man. It's going to Christian McCaffrey, and he's going to score. And he did a lot. I asked this to Kyle because I had heard from somebody that this might be something that they try out because they have not had success in the red zone because teams are, again, just going into zone because they don't have to take JP Mason as a pass catching back seriously. And I think we're going to see more Deebo in the backfield to start the play, like lining up as a running back in the red zone because it forces teams, not to the same degree as a Christian McCaffrey, but to something similar to where they will have to go man-to-man, and then that opens things up for Kyle Shanahan's offense to get guys open and scheme things up because now you can put the guys in conflict. It's hard to play against zone unless you have a lot of space behind it, where now these guys are too spaced out. It's just not something you want to be seeing in the red zone, and the Niners have been seeing a lot of it. So I think the Deebo Samuel of it all is a factor as well that we have to keep in mind as we talk about who running back 2, 3, 4 is. Deebo Samuel needs to be getting more reps at running back, and we've certainly seen it from scrimmage and in non-situational scenarios. I think we need to see it more, particularly in those scenarios, the red zone, third downs, things like that, as to dictate what the defense can appreciably do to success and give the 49ers some good one-on-one advantages and not just hope that everything works out because it clearly didn't when they played Minnesota, who plays a shit ton of zone.
Bazzy Mians is strange that we signed Tariq Owens, but don't even look into Frank Gore Jr. when we have a need at running back. You know, this running back situation is going to have to solve itself to some degree. I mean, yes, I agree with this. But they signed Patrick Taylor. I mean, you know, and he's
a pretty good special teamer.
This is something we've seen a couple times now. I mean, we saw this last year too, where the 49ers make a decision in the offseason and then they make a bad decision by staying with the bad decision. It's like,
sunk cost
you didn't
fallacy.
need to stay. You could have kept Deshaun Jameson last year and cut Oliver. It was obvious early that Oliver couldn't cover, but no, they signed Oliver as a free agent, and Jed may question us. We can't look bad. This year, the same thing happened. They brought in Devondre Campbell. They have Winters. He's better. They have Graham. He's better. They have other guys, that are better and cheaper, but Jed's money was spent on Graham, or spent on Campbell. So Campbell's going to play. And it's like,
it has
how
to
about
be,
this? It's pro sports.
So
just play the best guys. Play the best guys. And if, you acquired all these guys. So if you drafted some, you signed some, you traded for some, whatever, every guy on the roster is there because you put them there. So it's like, are you really going to protect your draft picks over your signings, or your signings in this case over your draft picks? It's like, how about this? No sacred cows, and play the best fucking guys. And then we don't have to worry about any of this, this guy and that guy and this rule and that rule. When you have, to me, when it's all insider knowledge and this happened with the Warriors the last couple of years. It's like, why the hell's Moody not playing? Why the hell's Anthony Lamb playing? Who the hell's Ty Jerome? Why the hell are these two-way guys playing? It's like when you have to explain your maneuvers and it's not readily, apparent to everybody, you're probably not making the right moves.
Well, I'll say this. As it pertains to Campbell and Winters, there's also the bias towards guys who have done it before. And this belief that, hey, if we put them in the right spot, they can be that player again. And every coach is going to have a bias to the guy who understands what the coach is telling them. No one wants chaos on the field when they're a coach, because then it looks like they're doing a bad job as a coach. So when Kyle Shanahan goes to defense, Nick Sorensen or Staley or whomever, and says, hey, should we play Winters over Campbell? Those guys are going to go with the guy that they know can at least be in the right position, even if they're getting burned again and again, over a guy like Winters, who, one, they can't trust is going to be on the field because he plays like a missile. He's the second coming of Dre Greenlaw, and probably isn't going to be in the right position, but he's going to make plays. But chaos, when you're a defensive coordinator, seems kind of counterintuitive. I'm supposed to be coordinating the defense. I can't get this guy in the right spot. And yes, he'll win some, but he's going to lose us some, and they're going to lose big, as opposed to a guy who's in the right spot and loses. He's going to lose consistently, but small. So there's the cognitive biases there, but I'm with you. And I think as the season progresses, we've already seen this to a degree. Mustafa's in now. They're playing Mustafa. It's probably earlier than they wanted to, but at a certain point, they got to live with it. Odom just wasn't getting it done. And, Huff is out, and they go, fuck it, why are we going back to Odom? We're trying to get him off the field, and Mustafa can impact play in a positive way, even if he doesn't know what he's doing yet. So let's make it happen. I think that they're doing it with Renardo Green right now. They've been trying to mix him in. Yadam, I don't know what happened. He looked great in training camp. He has not looked good on an NFL football field. That's the thing that matters. And so who's coming in? Here's Renardo Green, probably earlier than they wanted. I think that a lot of these moves with younger players in the secondary, and that's the only place it's really happened thus far, because, again, Cowing didn't get an opportunity until it was like Ronnie Bell completely soiled his pants on national television. But on the defensive side, I think that they wanted to do this halfway through the season and kind of have that second half burst. That's what you want to do with a rookie. You want to give them as much time as possible to learn before they get thrown into the fire, because you don't have time to think out there. But when you have injuries the way that they've had them, and when you've had bad performances the way that they've had them, sometimes you don't have the choice. And so you say, okay, I guess that had to be enough. And they're going to find, they're going to learn in the school of hard knocks, for better or for worse. So adding a linebacker into that mix, they might not have a choice on Thursday Night Football, because Devondre Campbell, if he's the Mike linebacker, because Fred Warner doesn't play, I don't think anyone can justify, after what I presume will happen to him on Sunday, I don't think anyone would be able to justify playing him anymore. So these things take care of themselves in a way, but I do think that the Niners should probably err more on the side of athleticism and speed and youth. And to this point, that's not something they've done under Kyle Shanahan's administration. And honestly, I'll say that they've maybe been a little bit more progressive this year than in years past as I look to the secondary. And that's encouraging that maybe that can translate into other areas of the field where I do see situations like this already arisen that probably need rectification here in the next week or so.
A couple more topics before we call it quits. Malik Mustafa played
He's
a
awesome.
bunch of snaps last week. He played a full complement.
Yes, he did.
Can he play the deep middle? Can he play the deep coverage spot, whether it be man or zone? Can he be a true free safety? Because it seems like Brown and Hufanga really, like Hufanga's a strong safety.
Yes, Hufanga's a Sam linebacker. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he's a box player. And Jair Brown is only slightly better in coverage. I think they're both box players.
Agreed.
And Mustafa can definitely hit like a box player, but can he cover?
Yeah,
and that's the question I would have. Do you think Mustafa can cover well enough to play free safety in this defense?
I have not gotten that impression yet. Now, Dieter and Hutch podcast, we're big Malik Mustafa guys because Hutch identified Malik Mustafa last January as his second favorite safety in the class behind Ballard from Georgia, who is starting, I believe, for the Packers and looks awesome. He's a really good player. And we just loved the Mustafa tape we saw. But we've always seen him as a strong safety in the realm of a Talanoa Hufanga, somebody who maybe not as big, clearly not as big, but somebody who you just want in the mix, making stuff happen, particularly in the run game. I don't see the foot speed. I don't see the instinctual play necessary to play, particularly as a cover 3 or a single high safety in a system that still does a lot of cover 3. Now, the 49ers defense is adapting. They're blitzing more, and they are doing more cover 2 stuff. So that gives you a little bit of wiggle room. But I would say that this team does not currently have a true free safety on its roster. And as the trade deadline, I know that, we just flipped over into October, but the trade deadline's at the end of the month. I think that's something this team really needs to look at because, as Armando points out accurately, I think they have 4 strong safeties with Odom in the mix if they had to throw him back in there. They have 4 strong safeties. And safeties are destiny in this league, and there's always going to be one guy back. You're not going cover 0 as a defensive principle. So I think you can get by on more cover 2 stuff, less space to cover, but I don't see it, and I'm pretty concerned about it. I'm legitimately concerned about it. I want to see more Mustafa. I guess if you had to throw somebody back there as the free safety, Jair Brown is the guy to do it, but that does not inspire confidence in me. I think that if this team, of all the places that they probably would want to add somebody, I would say going out and getting a bona fide free safety should be at the top of their list because they don't have one.
I think it should be on the list. At the top,
what's number 1 for you?
We'll see. It's always going to be pass rush just because I think that you can get by with the DBs they have if they have better pass rush. And I don't know that there's a safety out there that can cover that they could get. But if there was, I mean, I'd be interested in that.
Well,
person.
I'll throw you a name right now. And I talked about this the other day, and I'm going to explore it more. Derwin James from the Chargers. Now, you might go, well, the Chargers are playing good football, and Derwin James are really good. Derwin James is definitely getting cut at the end of the year. There's certain salary cap manifestation. Like, he's getting cut. He's also been injured a bunch. And
what's his position?
I mean, I still view him,
really, isn't he?
No, I still view him as a free. He's in everything. There's nothing that Derwin James can't do, at least in my eyes. Now, we can have differing opinions on that, but I would have no problem whatsoever with him patrolling the middle of the field in the cover 3 whatsoever.
He's a bit. I think he's better in the box. I think he can do it all, but I think he's better in the box. I mean,
shit. I'll tell you who I'd really want. I'd want either of those safeties from the Patriots, but they're not giving them up because they're the Patriots and they're smart enough not to give them up.
Who signed Darnell Savage?
Ooh, who did sign Darnell Savage?
Because he left Green Bay. And
did he go to Tennessee?
That's the player they need. That's the piece they need. They need somebody who can cover.
I think
they got to have a safety who can cover.
Let me look it up real fast because Darnell Savage would be a good option there.
I feel like he's on a team the Niners have already played in the preseason or in the regular season. I feel like we've seen him already.
Yeah. Well, there's only one way to find out. It's to go onto the internet, Larry. Darnell Savage. I mean, great player for the Packers. The Packers.
Where is he? Houston? Tennessee?
Darnell Savage is for the Jacksonville Jaguars, so he very much might be available, Larry. They are quite bad.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
So that's what I'm saying. A team like Jacksonville, that might not be a bad. That might be the guy to go knock on their door. I do think another coverage player would help you, but I'll say this: now that they've discovered Sam O and he's playing well,
he's been great.
They do have Kalia Davis coming back too, and Kalia Davis, I expect to do some good things, and unless he gets hurt again, which definitely could happen,
no doubt.
I got to ask you this one.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners are a team that prides itself on we don't blitz, we just rush our front four and we get it done with our front four.
Yeah,
and that's the plan. But your plan changes when your cask erodes, and basically their blitz rate has gone from 9% against the Jets, 12% against the Vikings, 20% against the Rams, 33% against the Patriots. And now I'm looking at Kyler's numbers. Kyler struggles both in completion percentage and yards per attempt against pressure. More so than when he doesn't have pressure. Some people would say, "Oh, well, of course," but that's not the way it always works. Sometimes pressure means defined reads. Sometimes defined reads, will help a quarterback who has struggles to go through progressions actually go through them. So, I guess the question is Sorensen's, plan post Hargrave to blitz, is it sustainable, or do you think it catches up with them?
I think it's sustainable if you trust your corners and you're willing to leave them on islands and you're willing to play more zone behind it. So you're doing fire blitzes. I don't see it as an inherent problem. And I think in particular, it's necessary to help stop the run and to start dictating some terms with opposing offenses. I think that's something that's kind of flown under the radar. These guys have had a lot of time in the pocket, and not every quarterback can do a lot with that. But the ones who can, and the ones who have good coaches scheming stuff up, have burned them. I mean, Sam Darnold being the best example. This week's going to tell us kind of everything we need to know. Arizona Cardinals are a great team on script. They're a terrible team off script, which seems counterintuitive when you have Kyler Murray. But he can still make plays, obviously, with his feet and pushing the ball downfield. We're going to see if Mooney Ward wants to up his game. If Mooney Ward wants to up his game and get back to the level he was playing at last year, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about them bringing somebody else. If he doesn't, now you are vulnerable at the front and the back end, because we just talked about the safeties. Like, it's not as if there's coverage there for those guys. So I think we're going to find out here pretty fast. I will say that it helps a lot when you have guys who are now setting the edge for the first time in a year and a half. Sam-O set the edge consistently against the Patriots. Not the hardest thing to do, probably the worst offensive line in the league. So, again, and the Cardinals aren't much better. But Sam-O, 19 snaps. If he missed an edge, I missed it. I thought Leonard Floyd, and I talked to Nick Bosa on the side, he mentioned this to me where he's like, I think that Leonard figured it out this past week. And figuring it out means, hey, you're getting stood up on every single rush. Stop. Not stop getting stood up. Just stop moving. You're getting stood up. Instead of getting pushed back, hold the line. Set the edge. Passive setting the edge is still setting the edge. And in that, the ball is going to come your way because Nick Bosa is coming from the other side, and everything's going to go away from Nick Bosa. And then I thought Yetur Gross-Matos had a solid game and is big enough to where you can consistently expect him to set that edge. When you have that containment, again, that gives you opportunities to blitz better, and it gives your secondary a better chance of being in a good position to make a play. So the front end and the back end, everything's got to be in line. This is not rocket science. This all sounds pretty cliche as I hear myself speaking here. But I need to see more from the secondary before I'm convinced that blitzing is a viable option. But if it's there, I do think it is.
2 last football things and 1 baseball.
Cool.
Who's your surprise 1 month into the season? Give me your biggest surprise with the Niners to you. What's the biggest surprise 1 month into the season?
Biggest. On a negative, Yadam. Yadam's been my biggest surprise. On the negative, I'm stunned that he looks this bad. It's really glaring, and it's making me question what I see in training camp. Like it's kind of rattling my confidence a little bit because he looked fucking awesome in training camp, and he has looked like butt in the regular season. And
here's my thought on him.
Yeah.
Just that. Don't fall in love with size. Size is great, but the athletes who play on the perimeter in the NFL are so athletic now that you have to be able to find guys who can mirror them. Yeah. And if you see anybody at all who's whatever, as long if they're cut high, if they anything at all that would make them struggle to stay with the best athletes out there, like you look at LeBron and KD. LeBron's a better athlete than KD. KD has this incredible length. If you had to play, these guys both had to play corner though. LeBron would be worlds better than KD.
Yes.
Why? Because KD's too long. He doesn't have the kind of agility. He can't mirror anybody.
Flip, baby.
He doesn't have the kind of, his game's all built on skill. LeBron's the better athlete. Yeah. I'll take the better athlete who's 5'9" over the worse athlete who's 6'2.5" every day, all day, twice on Sunday.
It's why I loved Emmanuel Mosley so much, because he was such a great athlete, but also had the size.
Right. But I mean, you gotta have that man-to-man cover ability.
Yeah.
And it's the size is like, I'd much rather have a defensive back who's 5'9" standing right next to the receiver than 6'2.5" 3 yards away from the receiver. I mean, it's just
I'll give you a positive surprise. Obviously everyone knows that JP Mason's having an incredible year, and I'm not going to pretend, because I think anyone who's been paying attention and watches the details of the game knew that JP Mason was going to be a pretty good running back. I'm surprised that he is as consistently excellent with the sample size that we have received, snap after snap after snap. I knew the vision was there. I knew the burst was there. I knew the tackle evading ability was there. I just thought that there was going to be a point of diminishing returns for someone who hadn't had that kind of workload before, that he gets tired, or, it was early and then it would fade away. He has been so consistent while getting a full workload in a way that but only a handful of backs get in the league anymore. That's been a wonderful surprise to me. And I can go through 10 more positive negatives. I mean, to think that anyone knew what the hell was going to come down the pipeline is just laughable. But I've been so impressed with JP Mason. I mean, he's looking like a prime Terrell Owens out there. And to the point where he's been so successful with this sample size, it almost makes you forget that he's working more than anybody else, and that he'll get like 300 carries at the end of the year at this pace.
Yeah.
You're just presuming that he can keep doing it forever, and that maybe we will hit that wall at some point. But the fact that he hasn't hit it already almost gives you this false sense of belief that he'll never hit it, that he's impervious to the sport of football. So that's been it's been incredible to watch, because I know that he's not as good as Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey can do everything on the football field, including what JP Mason's doing as a running back. But to see a running back that incisive and skilled, and to just be able to read the stretch play the way he does, to be able to read the inside stuff the way he does. They're running a lot of gap stuff on the offensive line this year, kind of a flashback to 2019. I have just been consistently impressed. I can't tell you the amount of times I've written down in my notes, this guy is really fucking good.
Yeah, no question. Back on the corner thought, by the way, Kool-Aid McKinstry of the Saints is second in the NFL in lockdown rate. He's preventing openings on 69.2%.
Yeah.
of opportunities. He has
Hell of a player.
been really, really good. My surprise guy is Dominic Pooney, in that Dominic Pooney today, PFF did their pass protection win rate rankings. He was the highest rated 49er offensive lineman. Higher than Trent, higher than Banks, higher than all those guys.
When he gets his hands on
Dominic
you, they
Pooney
stay
was
on
the
you.
13th rated guard. Trent was the 31st rated tackle. So to me, that was the big surprise. Last football question.
Yeah.
Best linebacker in Niner history. This weekend, Patrick Willis will get his Hall of Fame ring. He'll be honored at halftime of Niners Cardinals. He's a great, great player. He's going to receive his Ring of Excellence from the Pro Football Hall of Fame at halftime. Is Patrick Willis the best linebacker in 49ers history? And if not, who is?
Can I extrapolate it all? Because Fred Warner should be it when it's all said and done.
You could.
And you know,
Fred.
And that's not me. That's me saying it, but that's Patrick Willis telling me that. I talked to Patrick.
They're different.
They're very different, and the game has changed, right? But I wrote this after Sunday's game. I've never seen anyone play the linebacker position as well as Fred Warner's playing the linebacker position right now. Full stop. He is doing stuff that is so impactful on the game.
LT? Yeah,
I mean, well, LT's a pass rusher, right? Like a middle linebacker. And you think, I would say the two best middle linebackers of my football watching life are Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher. Now, is that fair to all the other great ones? No, but those are the guys that come to top of mind for me. Fred Warner's
Junior
playing
Seau?
Junior Seau's a great player, a little bit before my time. I mean, in terms of being able to understand it to the full ability. He was more tail end of my career. I saw more Junior Seau on the Patriots, which is kind of a sad thought. RIP Chargers. But what Fred is doing in the modern linebacking position, he's as good of a run stuffer as either of those two guys. And what made Urlacher really special, and again, I'm a child of Chicago. I grew up. I wasn't a Bears fan or anything, but you watch the Bears game every Sunday. You have friends, or at least I thought I had some friends. And so you want to be versed on the Bears. Urlacher was a safety at New Mexico, and they converted him to middle linebacker. So his coverage skills were immense. They were incredible. It was something that no one else was really doing before. A lot of linebackers were just straight into the gap. That's all they could really do. Urlacher could move everywhere. He was sideline to sideline. He was end zone to end zone.
Young Urlacher could run.
He was unbelievable.
He stayed around and he couldn't run at the end, but he could really run at the beginning.
Right. And so that is what Fred is reminding me of early this season. And it's not as if Fred wasn't already the best linebacker in football, in my opinion. Going into the season, he's playing at a higher level than I've ever seen him play before. And I talked to Patrick Willis about it after the Jets game, which was, an incredibly dominant performance from Fred, of which he's now matched 3 straight times since. And he's like, I wish I was as good as Fred Warner. And he wasn't bullshitting. And I go, yeah, fuck, I wish I was as good as anything as Fred Warner is at playing linebackers. So, I don't think that anyone would be wrong. I do think Navarro Bowman needs to be in the conversation because while it didn't last a long time, when it was on, it was spectacular. I do think Patrick Willis is a better linebacker than him, but I think Navarro Bowman needs to be in the conversation as well. A lot of recency bias here from your boy, 36 years old. But I think when it's all said and done, if Fred Warner stays healthy and continues to operate anywhere near the level he's at right now, he'll go down. 54 will be retired. He'll be in the Hall of Fame, and he'll go down as not just the greatest linebacker in 49ers history, but one of the greatest linebackers in the history of football. He is that special a player.
Yeah, I mean, I think Willis is more talented. I really do. I just
to watch,
he's
man.
Bigger.
It wasn't tactical.
Just as fast.
You felt him. You felt Patrick Willis, man.
Patrick Willis was a blue chipper. He was a blue chipper. He was a guy that went in the top 10.
Overall?
He was
7
7-time Pro Bowler,
Defensive
Rookie of the Year, and just an awesome player. I would say, okay, so who's this debate really?
Yeah,
you can
throw in the big time names.
Okay, I'm taking out Charles Haley because Charles Haley's not a linebacker. Charles Haley's a defensive end. Okay, 3-4 linebackers are defensive ends. So Charles Haley's a defensive end. So he's not on the linebacker list. So otherwise he would be on the list.
Otherwise, Alden Smith would also be on the linebacker list, and boy, that'd be cheating.
Right. Alden Smith, another guy, defensive end. much, defensive end for sure. Then there's Dave Wilcox, who was a 7-time Pro Bowler and played in the 60s and 70s. But to me, if you played in that era, you're tremendous, but you didn't play in the best era of the NFL.
No, sir.
So because I think the best era in the NFL came after the late 70s. I think the NFL was quite a bit better, I think, in the late 70s than it was in the early 70s, and it was a whole lot better in the 80s than it was in the 70s. So I'll say Wilcox, no, even though I have great respect for Wilcox. That's Justin Wilcox's father, by the way. Fred Warner, special, very, very special. Bowman, I think, was a better all-around player. It just didn't last very long because he got hurt.
Here for a good time, not for a long time.
Norton, no. Keenan, no. Julian Peterson, no. Hacksaw Reynolds, no. It's a Willis. To me, it's a Willis, Warner, Bowman, Greenlaw, if you love Greenlaw in that conversation. And I do think Greenlaw is very, very special. But I would go Willis. I'd go Willis, then Warner, then Bowman, then Greenlaw. Probably like that.
I would go with those top three right now if we had to plant a flag and say, hey, today's the day. Whatever's on the record is on the record. Yeah, I would agree that Willis is better than Warner with what Warner's already put on, but he's number 2. And then, yeah, I'd have Bowman as 3. That's right.
Bowman was spectacular. Bowman, unfortunately, he might have even been faster than Willis.
And wider.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, he was short, but 250 pounds, rocked up, incredibly fast. They were all great.
Saw some late stage Bowman too, when he was with the Raiders, and it was kind of a sad watch. But he's the linebackers coach of the Chargers now. And guess whose defense is really good at stopping the run?
Yeah, and he was working for Minter. Jesse Minter is the former DC at
they got a hell of a staff over there. As Jim Harbaugh said, like Moses, I'm going to die on my staff.
Last one. I drove back from Santa Clara listening to CamBR, listening to you just go to town on why the Buster Posey thing wasn't good. I disagree. But a lot of the things I disagree on are just, you're like, what's next? Like, who's going to be, and I don't think they're in a world of hurt. I think they were in a world of hurt before. They had a general manager who was absolutely fascinated with getting the best deal. And you have a team that, because of market circumstances, you're going to have to offer more money in California, Northern California, to get wives of conservative ball players from Texas, Florida, and Orange County to want to come and live in the Bay Area, in the left-leaning Bay Area, especially in this polarized political climate. You're going to have to pay more than other people. You're going to have to overpay to attract free agents. And Farhan, like by law, never wanted to overpay. So since he had a rule that I'll never overpay, and the circumstances mandate that there's nobody that you're ever going to get without overpaying, guess what? You're not going to fucking get anybody. And guess what? He didn't fucking get anybody. And now he's gone. So they were more screwed with him than they are now. Now, at least they have somebody who can speak the player's language.
Is that a
Buster's
mutually
always
is
been
that a mutually
successful at what he
exclusive
does too.
I hate that argument, Larry. I hate that. That is the definition of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
No, but I mean,
because
I heard you crap on
things,
the Lynch. I heard you crap on the Lynch angle, and I think that's a great comparison. When you have somebody who had a playing career, they don't need to be a regional scout, college scouting director, cross checker. It's not required. It's required for me. If I wanted to be a general manager,
I get that.
I would have to go from, grad assistant to quality control to, personnel assistant
100%.
to
You
road
don't
scout
have
to
the
cross
built-in.
checker
I
to
get it.
regional to,
You gotta work your way
I've
up.
got to take every step. John Lynch doesn't.
No,
And Buster Posey's a John Lynch. He doesn't have to take every step.
but it's apples and oranges, Larry, because baseball is infinitely harder than this football thing. And he's coming in as the number one. No one can point to me outside of one man, anyone who has ever done what Buster Posey is currently doing. Nobody.
What is Buster Posey currently doing?
He's gone from having no administrative role in baseball operations, no official one. Great. He finished the Chapman contract. He gave Matt Chapman everything he wanted. I could get that contract done if you're just willing to roll over on everything. That was his job.
What experience is he missing, Dieter? Exactly. No, what experience is he exactly missing? Because there was a guy that was a great general manager in Giants history, and his name was Al Rosen.
Yeah.
And Al Rosen was a Hall of Fame third baseman for the Cleveland Indians. But Al Rosen wasn't and he was an executive behind the scenes with the Yankees, but he was never the Yankee GM.
No.
And then he was in Houston, but there was Tal Smith and other people running that franchise. But Al Rosen was essentially the Buster Posey of his day, a very respected, disciplined, likable, smart guy.
Prior.
And he became a very good executive.
So,
and in fairness to Lynch, according to a poll done this week or last week by, 40 NFL coaches and GMs, they rank him as the third best GM in the game, and he's never done it before.
I agree with that, but again, it's a much different translation when you're a John Lynch and you have a Hall of Fame career and you're a broadcaster and you're in this. Steve Kerr went from being a player, not a Hall of Fame player, but a player, to a broadcaster, to a GM. Kyle Shanahan was the GM of the San Francisco 49ers for several years. He was the one who hired John Lynch. He was the one who had roster control. John Lynch was his Pete Padilla. He
never did it without Lynch.
He never did it without Lynch. I'm not saying that Lynch wasn't part of the thing, and I'm not saying that Buster Posey shouldn't be part of the solution for the San Francisco Giants. My issue is that they have now made him the singular solution on an organization that is rotten from top to bottom because of Farhan Zaidi. That's my issue. There's no infrastructure in place because the infrastructure that's in place was built by Farhan Zaidi. So there's no infrastructure in place to insulate Buster Posey's inexperience in a role that is far more intricate and far more demanding than being an NFL GM. Larry, there are 9 guys on a practice squad on every team. There's one coaching staff for every team. NFL draft comes around, and an idiot like me can have an opinion on every single player in it. You have to scout every high school player, every college player, every international player. You have to have an understanding, at least rudimentary or a database understanding of 5,000 professional baseball players. And you have to have a staff at 6 different levels that you have to understand how to build the development system off of. That's the director of baseball operations job.
Have you seen these draft rooms? The general manager, like Sabian, wasn't picking the 13th round guy.
I agree
with that. 15th round guy. He might have had an opinion, but they've got all kinds of scouts who do this stuff. 100%. And I hate to say this for John Lynch. You think John Lynch? John Lynch is literally in one of the areas the 49ers have done well in is after the draft. John Lynch is literally holding a press conference while players are being secured after the draft. So we know that he's not doing it because he's not even in the room while it's getting done. He's talking to us, and somebody else is doing this. So,
but Larry, you're making my point for me.
But that means
Farhan Zaidi
wasn't going to have some people doing this. Other people.
Of course he will. Who are those people who are going to be doing it?
You don't think Michael Holmes and some of these guys have done a decent job? Because they've done a better job than Evans and Sabes did. I mean, I think the Giants have done a better job than they had been doing in the amateur draft. I know it's bigger. I know it's more vast. But there's also way more people involved.
Farm system in baseball. So how good a job could they be doing?
Well, it wasn't good enough, that's for sure. But I mean, in fairness to Farhan, I think there's more more prospects in the pipeline today than when he inherited the team originally. I just think that you're right in that we don't have the answers yet. We don't know who Buster's going to hire. But
correct.
But it doesn't mean that it was a bad hire. It just means that this is the beginning.
Well,
and they're starting fresh, dude. You know,
no doubt about that.
This is the downside of starting fresh, is that you've got to decide who's going to stay. You got to decide who's going to go. You got a whole myriad of decision-making things to go through. But Buster's been enormously successful. And I think if you look around baseball, I mean, for the most part, who are these people running these teams? They're either ex-players.
No, there's like 3 ex-players, and they're all guys who work for some accounting firm. The rest of them are Ivy League hedge fund
way
managers.
more than 3. Way more than 3. I mean, Jerry DePoto's an ex-player. Scott Service is an ex-player. I mean,
Scott Service is not. Scott Service is who's he the GM of?
I thought he's a
manager.
Isn't he a GM? Oh, well, he's a manager, but I'm just saying you have guys who are managers.
Manager.
But I mean, if I want to pick up a list of GMs, I guarantee
Craig Breslow,
Billy
Chris
Bean
Young
was an ex-player. Chris Young was an ex-player.
But here's the thing: Chris Young did 2 years under John Daniels in Texas. Okay, you think about Jerry DePoto. He did a long scouting history. Billy Bean was a scout for a long time before he became the GM, and by the way, was going to lose his job until what's his name? Jonah Hill's character comes around, and Paul DePodesta comes around and saves him with Moneyball. Like, I'm not saying that Buster can't do it. And honestly, I'm not saying that it's a bad hire. What I'm saying is the San Francisco Giants don't have a fucking plan, because anybody who had a good idea thinks, hey, we're going to do this with Buster. We're going to make this happen with Buster. They would understand that someone's going to be like, how? How are you going to do this with Buster? And to date, all I've gotten is, well, he's been successful at everything he's done before, as if that's the same shit. I've been successful at a lot of stuff. I can't go snowboard in the Olympics tomorrow, and that's the level of difficulty we're asking. So let me just throw this your way.
He's a Hall of Fame catcher.
That
he
makes
doesn't know baseball?
I never said he doesn't know baseball. Who would imply that he doesn't know baseball?
But you're saying that he can't hire people around him. Are you mad what are you mad about? I mean, I don't understand
specifically what we're mad about.
You sounded very mad about this. I don't understand the madness. I don't understand the being mad about this. It doesn't make sense. They got rid of a general manager who didn't do squat. One of the most respected, knowledgeable players of any era of Giants baseball is taking over. And there's plenty of time to rip the hire and say it wasn't the right hire.
No, I'm not.
You're going to rip it before the hire?
I'm not ripping the hire. I'm ripping ownership for not having a fucking plan. Okay, so here's what happened. They didn't decide that they were going to fire Farhan until middle of last week. Okay, first off, embarrassing. How do you not already know? Right? How do you not already know?
But that's speculation. We don't know that.
I'm telling you right now, Larry. It's not speculation. They didn't.
But I mean, here, Dieter. I mean, you're talking to somebody who lives here, and I have my own contacts. I have lots of friends who are in that ownership group who I talked to all summer. There were Giants owners who told me at the game this summer in July, hey, I don't know if Farhan's coming back. So there was,
no, it's
so
not
there were definitely Giant ownership group people who were like,
oh yeah,
I don't like what I'm seeing, and this is not, it's not accepted that he's coming back. So
it wasn't known if he was coming back this time last year. So it's not as if he was on some great solid footing and then it all fell apart in the last 2 weeks. The point is they made the decision late last week. They didn't interview anybody else. Buster said he wanted the job, and they gave Buster the job. Okay, you want to give Buster the job, that's your prerogative. But at no point...
what is the job? What is the job that he was hired for?
The job is the director of baseball operations. And now, by the way, the job is whatever Buster wants it to be, which from his press conference, sure as shit sounds like he wants to be a figurehead, which means that you should have your number 2
which is
in
really
place.
Smart, right? That means he's hiring guys with experience.
How the fuck is he going to get someone to do the director of baseball operations job when you can't go and get another team's GM, because that would be a lateral move and they would block it? So now you're hiring a number 3 to do the job of a number 1.
No, you could definitely hire an assistant general manager to to do the job if you wanted to and promote him to be the general manager. I mean, the same way you could, anybody could, you could get somebody like a Sabes or a Coletti or some veteran guy. If you wanted to, if you wanted to do the moves, you could have a veteran guy overseeing it and advising you. If you didn't want to do the moves and you wanted to be kind of just the guy this guy reports to, you could structure it any way you want. That's why I didn't understand why you were ripping it, because we don't know what Buster's structure is going to be.
Why would you present it? Why would you present Buster Posey, no experience whatsoever, immediately? Why? It reeks to me on a team that doesn't have an organizational plan. When we talk about the trade deadline and Farhan talking out of both sides of his mouth, do you think that was Farhan entirely?
Okay, can I counter that by saying, do you want? I mean, I sometimes I wonder about this. Do we want non-baseball people making baseball decisions?
I don't give a shit.
Dieter, let's review what happened last time. How did the Giants wind up with Farhan? Larry Baer interviewed a bunch of candidates and decided Farhan was the guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but who the hell's he? Why would Larry know who? Why would you have a guy who's like a bean counter business guy hiring a baseball guy? That was their mistake. At least now you're going to have a baseball guy hiring a baseball guy.
Okay, so
John Lynch was hired by Shanahan, but I'd feel much better about him because he was hired by Shanahan than if he was hired by Jed. And I don't want Jed to hire the guy. I want Jed to make one hire. I think the best thing to do, if you're an owner, make one hire and get out of the way. And I think that's the best decision. So I actually like this decision from the Giants. Why? Because they've put it in Buster's hands. Buster's got a great track record of success in what he's done, but he knows he can't do it or isn't going to do it. But now it's on to him. And I think he's going to, I'd much rather have Buster Posey hire somebody and set the new course than have Larry Baer do it.
Let me ask you a question here. Okay, first off, Charles Johnson, I guess he gets to call the shots, whatever.
Well, Greg, his son, whatever.
Craig, my bad. Let's go with Craig.
Greg. Yes.
Greg, whatever.
Greg.
It's late. If it's Buster Posey and Jeremy Shelley, how does that make you feel?
I know who Jeremy Shelley is. He worked with Sabes. He worked with Coletti. He's a really sharp guy, very nice guy. But I think that would be, Dieter, I'd say that's a little bit of a projection on, like, you're projecting him into the role because he's never really done it. So I wouldn't love that one.
I'm telling you right now, whoever they hire for this role is going to be a projection. I'm telling you right now. I've heard this from enough people.
But he's more of a projection, Dieter, because he's never really been. Has he been the assistant GM even? No. Has he?
Well, I mean, he's technically the assistant GM now. He's the number 3, right?
I know who he is. I mean, I think he's smart. He's got some experience. I mean, I have no problem with him being in the organization. I don't want him making. He's the architect. No. I mean, he's the chief architect. No.
I'm telling you right now, that is the level they are going to get. Mark my words right now. They are going to get Owens from the A's or Shelley. They're
different. First of all, you just group those two guys together. They could not be more different. Billy Owens is a personal friend of mine. Billy Owens is a scout.
Yeah.
He's a scout. Jeremy Shelley's not a scout. Jeremy Shelley's an office guy. So they're different. I would love Billy Owens. I think Billy Owens, and I sent a note to Billy the other day saying, I hope you get this job, and he's hoping that he gets an interview for it as well. But I think Billy would.
Why
be a good
wouldn't they have that? If they wanted to come out tomorrow, they fire Farhan on Monday. By the way, they don't need everyone's like, oh, it was a great PR move. What the fuck do you need a PR move? Everyone was happy they fired Farhan. That's the PR move. Okay. So now they rush Buster up there on a Tuesday. He doesn't have anything prepared. I love analytics. I love scouts. He's personable. That's that. What are the traits that make him good for this job? Well, let me run through all the. Well, he's determined and he's got a great temperament and he's a smart guy. All great things that would make you a manager and made Buster Posey a great baseball player. If you're going to put in somebody with zero experience, practical experience in the role, the biggest role on your team, $4 billion company, this is the most important job. If you're going to put somebody in that role, that's never done anything remotely close to this outside of being somebody on the other side of the front office as a great player for a long time. Why wouldn't you take the time, a week to a month, and create the infrastructure around him so that when you introduce him, you now can go through the full plan? I'm Buster Posey. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's Billy Owens. He's going to run the show. I can't argue with that kind of a plan because it's a plan, right? And I can see the structure. When you go into a press conference a day after you say Buster got the job because, quote, Buster wanted the ball, and they have no answers. They haven't interviewed. He hadn't even called Sabes yet for advice on how to do the gig yet. Okay? When there's no preparation on this, how am I supposed to feel comfortable that everything's going to end up hunky-dory? No experience and no preparation. Can he pull it off? Absolutely. He should be part of the solution. He's one of the best assets the San Francisco Giants have. If that means that he's the guy overseeing everything and effectively being management on the baseball side, that's great. But what I have heard so far is, oh, he's just taking over Farhan's staff and maybe mixing in a couple of guys here or there. Well, Farhan's staff is part of the problem that has led us to the point where they're now, it just feels reactionary.
They may not be, though. They may not be part of the problem, Dieter. That would be my point. They may not be the problem. They may have. I think Michael Holmes is pretty. I think Michael Holmes is pretty sharp, and I think the Giants have done a better job in recent years with the amateur draft. I don't know what the solution is, but I'll say this: if the plan,
Farhan Zaidi the man.
What's that?
Was the issue with this organization, with the issue with this team's baseball operations, why they have the 30th ranked farm system, why their major league roster is middling, while everything feels very mediocre, was the singular issue Farhan Zaidi the man? You get rid of him and everything's A-okay. Was that? I don't think that was the problem. I'm not saying the Farhan was the solution. I'm just saying I don't think he was the singular problem. I think this thing is rotten.
I think he was the singular problem.
Okay.
I really do.
And
I really do. You know why? Because I talked to some Giants coaches in March this year.
Yeah.
And I said to them, I said, give me your rundown on Farhan. Give me your rundown on Farhan. What's going on here? He's obviously really bright, but he makes a shit ton of moves. And a lot of them are inconsequential, and it feels like he's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. And there's a lot of, and the guy said to me, and this guy's been in the organization for 20 something years and has known Sabes, Coletti, all these different regimes. And he said, you know what? Farhan means well. He's got a good heart, and he's trying to do what he thinks is right for the organization. But he said, ultimately what happens is when you make a series of moves and they're all meant for incremental improvement here, incremental improvement there, you do gain some incremental improvement, but there's a chaotic feel to our club because of all of the promotions and demotions and guys getting DFA'd, and you're trading for this guy and you're sending that guy out. And then the guy you traded for last Thursday, you're now trading again, and you're picking up guys that you released and you're releasing guys that you picked up. And it creates a chaos that ultimately, are you getting incremental improvement? Yeah. But after you make a series of those moves, it starts to work against you because the overall chaotic feel takes over, and then it's you wind up losing over the long haul, when despite the fact that you're chasing all these incremental improvements. So this is a guy who's been there, knows it, and so it's like I deferred to this guy. I'm like, okay, well, I believe you, and that was his belief, that it was just too much chaos around all of these maneuvers. And that it was much ado about nothing. And for effect.
You have to make those movers if you're Farhan Zaidi, because you haven't produced anybody to stabilize your day-to-day lineup. And so you have to try to win every day on the margins. And this is, by the way, that's Farhan's fault. Okay, so I'm not saying that Farhan is exonerated here. It's his fault. And he is now digging himself deeper into the hole because of this. But this is my overarching point. There is currently no plan other than Buster's cult of personality here. Okay. And that, hey, the culture is going to be better. The culture doesn't need to be good or bad. It just needs to win. Okay. The good cultures, they win. The bad cultures, they lose. And sometimes it's an ipso facto scenario. There is no clear plan. One might develop. It might be great. In which case I'll say, I think this is a great plan, and let's see where it goes. It might also be complete ass, in which case I'll say, hey, that's what happens when you don't go in with a plan and you just give it over to Buster and we figure it out from here, and he has no practical experience in this realm. I'll say this.
But it's going to be Buster's plan. At least it's Buster's plan.
You see, I don't care. I don't care if, Buster's plan, Farhan's plan, whatever. I need results, and I have no track record with this guy other than memories. And that doesn't do anything for me. That's wish casting. And I know that this job, Farhan's one of the sharpest dudes I've ever talked to. He got eaten alive. He's one of the smartest guys I know. He had perfect resume coming in, got eaten alive. So that doesn't mean we throw experience and resumes out the window because, well, it didn't work for that guy. It didn't work for him because in part ownership hamstrung him on wanting to do his plan, which was always going to be the wrong plan for the San Francisco Giants and the way they think about baseball and the sort of regressionist thought that is there. They're always trying to go backwards. They didn't want to do what Scott Harris is doing in Detroit right now, which seems to be working pretty well. That's the Farhan thing. That's not how they want to do business. Okay, it's their business. They can run it the way they want. My issue is this. You give Farhan $250 million or you give him $50 million. He was getting you an 80-win team. Now, one year he won 107. We can't explain it. But he gave you a baseline of competence, albeit boring, albeit non-playoff. But he gave you a baseline of competence year in and year out. And that made the owners very happy. That's the reason they hired him. They raised the floor because it felt like the floor was coming out when Bobby took over. Looked like everything was falling apart. And Farhan came in and he didn't have to rebuild. He just raised the floor. He gave them a baseline level of competence. Now, he was never going to get to the ceiling. He was never going to get over that hump. But the Giants are sitting there right on the teetering edge, and everyone thinks, we can just get over that hump, and then it's all gravy from there. It can also go the other way. And when you bring in someone with no experience, without a number two in place, in a marketplace that is very skeptical from what I'm hearing about, hey, I want to go work for this guy. He'll get a lot of former players and stuff. But when we're talking about the really sharp minds that do make up the vast majority of Major League Baseball front offices right now, some of these quants, as much as people don't like them, are important. You look at these hedge fund traders, they're the ones running these successful teams. Some of those guys are very skeptical of going and now working for an owner of the team who really can't be fired and who also doesn't really want to do the nuance and details of the job that are necessary. He wants someone else to do it for him. As well he should. That's the smart decision on his end, given his level of experience. The bottom can fall out of this thing, and it can fall out of it pretty hard. And that's my concern. If they had done Buster Posey a week from now, 10 days from now, whatever, and Billy Owens or whomever, and here's our staff, and here's our plan, let's go do it, no problem. But I do not respect an organization that is openly winging it. And that's what it feels like they're doing. And they feel like they can get away with it because of the nostalgia purposes. And I don't buy that shit.
I think you're being overly critical. I mean, let's pump the brakes, take a breath, and see what he does.
Ownership, Larry. It's not an issue.
But,
with everyone.
You're making it seem, Dieter, like they were in this. They were fucking set. They weren't fucking set. They were screwed. They had a general manager who didn't develop a farm system fast enough.
I'm saying they have the worst situation in baseball. I'm a White Sox fan. I don't say that lightly.
I mean, they didn't develop their farm system, and they can't sign free agents. And
I'm not saying they should have kept him. I'm saying they had a plan.
And the general manager is making a million excuses, crime and this and all that. You know, the guy violence in the city, and it's needles and drugs.
Who said that? Buster said that.
Yeah, but I mean, Buster was right.
I'm not arguing. My point, the other thing, too, is I've heard a bunch of people say, well, Buster's going to bring in the big-time free agents. Has he not been in these rooms? Isn't the reason he's part of the ownership group to bring in the big-time free agents? Wasn't that why they gave him a piece of the team at a discount so that he can be in these rooms? Was he not there for Ohtani and Judge? Did I miss that part?
Yeah, but I mean, once again, it's like there's a limit to, you're not running the show when you're just a guy on the ownership group. When you're the boss, the baseball head of baseball operations, now you are running the show. I don't know. I mean, I don't. You're right in that we don't know what's going to happen, but I mean, I just think that you should have just waited. I mean,
I agree.
To say that the thing's going to be bad. I mean,
I'm saying, who said it was going to be? I'm saying it very well could be. I'm saying you have to consider these possibilities, and everyone just wants to go, it's going to be great because Buster's in charge.
Well, I don't know if everybody's saying it's going to be great, but I think Giants fans are very encouraged because Buster's a tie to a smarter era, to a better era. And Farhan, I think Farhan is a bit kind of a fraud, to be completely honest. I think
he failed miserably.
He sold himself as a creative deal maker, and that's great if you make creative deals. But if you don't, you're just a liar. And he made a bunch of excuses, and he didn't deliver anything. And
they're mutually exclusive concepts.
You might be right, but all I'm saying is you might be wrong.
I absolutely could be wrong. I at no point have stated that I know what's going to happen here. I find it interesting that I seem to be the only person in this market who is even proffering the possibility that someone who has no practical experience running a baseball operations department, even as a shadow for a year or two, is now in charge with no infrastructure in place in front of the most critical offseason this team has faced in a very long time prior to firing their director of baseball operations. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills and saying, what? Huh? What's the plan? And when you ask what's the plan and they offer nothing, going, well, this doesn't seem ideal. I'd like to see a plan.
Did you write this article about the Warriors hiring Mike Dunleavy?
Mike Dunleavy worked for 3 years under Bob Myers, and Bob Myers worked for a year under Larry Harris. There's at least an apprenticeship there. And by the way, Mike Dunleavy will now be judged by his record as Buster Posey will.
But at
saying, least I can point to Mike Dunleavy in the goddamn room.
Mike Dunleavy won no titles. Mike Dunleavy is answering.
How many titles has Andrew Friedman won as a player? None. But I don't give a shit if these guys have been a good baseball player.
Look at the Warrior organization compared to the Giants. Greg Johnson is the son of Charles Johnson. He's not. He doesn't have his own draft board.
I'm not arguing that he should.
Yeah, but I mean, Joe does. And Joe's got his own draft board. And Joe's kids have got their own draft board.
You don't think that Joe wanted to put his kid in charge? That's the other thing.
If Charles Johnson named Greg Johnson the boss, then Greg Johnson was making free agent additions, then you got the Warrior situation. But right now, it doesn't. To me, it seems like I would be really, really critical of Dunleavy's never won anything.
Okay.
Joe has a say in personnel, and has no basketball experience. His son has only tiny little bit of basketball experience, and he has a major say in things as well. It's not like Charles Johnson has three sons and he put them all there like Joe did. And Joe's being hailed as like genius. Oh, he's an incredible genius, but he's got his son in Dunleavy, and you got the Giants who have three rings with Buster, and maybe the only move they're going to make is to bring in Buster. Maybe they're going to let him chart the thing going forward. And you know what?
On what spec?
When Eddie D bought the Niners, he hired Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas was a terrible GM. He came recommended because he lived in Youngstown, Ohio. He traded Joe Cribbs and a bunch of draft picks for O.J. Simpson.
What about it was fascinating?
It was a terrible decision. And so what did Eddie do? Eddie hired Walsh, and Walsh hired McVay, and that was it. Eddie got out of the football decision making, and he had his guy. It was Walsh,
correct?
So, and Walsh had never run a team, and he had never run a team at that point. He was a college coach. He was a pro coordinator.
Was he not running Stanford football?
But he was at that time. He was the head coach of Stanford football, but he'd never been an NFL head coach. They were projecting him to be in a role where they gave him total control. He brought in John McVay. The two of them mapped it out. All I'm saying is, you're right. We don't know who Brock Purdy's going to bring in, and he could bring in some donkey. Yeah. But Brock Purdy's got a lot of credibility within Buster Posey's got a lot of credibility within the. Buster Posey's got a lot of credibility within the sport, and there's plenty of time to say it's a bad decision. Let's give it some time.
The bad decision is
to me,
very clearly
to jump it as a bad decision it doesn't get. You're not giving Buster enough credibility for his accomplishments within the game, I think, because you're assuming because he hasn't been the president of baseball ops that he can't do it. But a lot of people assume John Lynch couldn't do it either, and John Lynch can do it.
But I've already explained how I do not see those two things as the same. I've already explained that I don't think that Buster can't do it. I'm skeptical that he can. There is a difference. I'm very skeptical that he can. I would bet that he can't. If I'm betting, I'd say that he can't. But I'm not saying there's no possibility that he can't be good at this. What my issue is that there were no guardrails in place with Giants ownership to where when Buster says with his competitive spirit and his I'm sick of the shit attitude, which we all had, when he says, give me the ball, which was the analogy they used, give me the ball, they didn't think to themselves, Buster has never done anything remotely close to this job before. And I don't know if y'all know about the Dunning-Krueger effect, but success in one field doesn't necessarily translate to success in another. And the fallacy that comes along with the Dunning-Krueger is thinking, oh, because I was good at this, I'll be good at that. And when you look at who is successful currently in Major League Baseball as director of baseball operations, again, not to say that Buster Posey can't do this, because he is very much a smart, intelligent guy with a ton of competitive fire, which is something that Farhan lacked and this team needs. There's a lot of qualities that I love about Buster Posey in any capacity in baseball. He would have made a great manager. He can't be a manager because he's a part owner, but he would have made a great manager. He'd be great as part of an overall front office, which he will eventually be. But the fact that no one in ownership has guardrails up to say, hey, what can we do to make sure that Buster is most successful from the jump? Okay. What can we do to ensure that someone who has no experience in this realm can get off the ground running today? The fact that that didn't happen, that they said Buster wanted it and he's going to figure it out, even though he has no experience in any of this realm, completely different realm than as a player. The fact that there are no guardrails in place reeks to me. And I think back to last year when they hired Bob Melvin, and Farhan Zaidi's up there at the dais, and the column I wrote there is, I don't know if Bob Melvin's a good manager or not, just like I don't know if Buster Posey is going to be a good director of baseball operations or not. But I can tell you this, ownership has fucked up royally because they are sending a discordant message to the rest of baseball, to free agents, because the contracts between Bob and Farhan to that point were not made public. I had to ask Farhan point blank, hey, did you sign a contract extension? To which he replies, yes. And then he lied about the amount of years, or he didn't know the amount of years, whatever. But they couldn't even announce Farhan Zaidi had a contract extension this time last year. So they make the mistake of saying, oh, we'll change one thing, but we won't change the other. And now this year okay, we're going to keep Bob, but we're going to get rid of Farhan, but we're going to bring in Buster. These guys don't know how to run a baseball team. That's what stands out to me. And now they're hoping that Buster Posey, legend of the game, someone with an impeccable reputation in the Bay Area for being a sports legend and an impeccable human, it should be noted. They're just going to hope that he can all fix it because of Buster magic. And I shudder to think of what happens if there's any roadblocks, because clearly there are no guardrails in place. There's no.
These guys. Okay, once again, these guys that you said don't know what they're doing. Also, are the same people who won 3 titles, and there's no denying it. I mean, right. It's not like they aren't. They are the same people. So yes, I don't know that we can say that they don't know what they're doing when somehow, unless you believe that they lucked into the 3 titles. If you believe they lucked into the 3 titles, then I guess you can believe that they're incompetent. But are they really incompetent? They got the 3 titles.
Listen, this is the other thing that I have a problem with here. I wasn't around for the Magic.
They weren't the best team some of those years, but guess what? They were the best team in 2003. They won over 100 games, and they didn't win it. So it's like some years you're going to win 100 games in the regular season, and you're not going to win in the playoffs. Other years you're going to win 88 games. You're going to slide in, and you're going to win the whole thing. I mean,
I don't. Like this is not a well-run business, Larry. And if this was,
you don't think it's a well-run business? They're $525 million, and their team is boring as hell. They made $525 million of revenue, and they have a boring baseball team. I think they've got a pretty good business going, to be honest.
I think that there's a lot of points that you can say that they don't, because it's a $4 billion company that is operating like a mom and pop shop. And I'll take it one step further. Franklin Templeton Investments is down 20% this year. No, 33% year over year on the stock market, while the S&P 500 is up 20. I don't think they run very good businesses in general. So I appreciate that there are some very smart people in ownership who have some very strong real estate leanings, who do a very good job with the real estate aspect of it. And Larry Baer, for all of his faults, does a pretty good job with the business side of things. He's got a good track record at that. Done it for a long time. The baseball side of things, they don't know what they're doing, and that's the forward-facing part of their business. They got everything else down pat, because that's the kind of stuff that no one's actually paying attention to. But the product that they put on the field, you're 100% right, it's boring. And the only reason that it hasn't been abysmal is because Farhan Zaidi has been able to make it just boring enough to where it's competent through August. And it's not good enough for this market. And again, Buster Posey might be God's gift to baseball, and his magic might translate to any realm that he's ever touched. But I don't buy magic. I don't buy wishful thinking. I don't buy hope. And I sure as shit don't buy someone without a resume just because, well, they say that he's a great guy and this is what we need. I buy history, track record, potential, talent. And right now I'm just getting a lot of wish casting and a lot of positive vibes, and vibes aren't a plan.
Well, we'll have to see where it goes. But
only one way to go.
I'm way more. I mean, think of it this way. There were people last week who were like, yeah, give Farhan another shot. I'd much rather go down this road of Buster, whatever Buster's going to do, than go down the road of another year of Farhan and his horrendous trades, his horrendous free agent signings. It's just
personality
awful.
Stuff, and
awful.
That kind of cult of personality can work out great. There's no question about it. But cult of personality does not sound like a plan to me. And if it wasn't Farhan Zaidi,
but the thing is, you're not giving it any time, Dieter. I mean, you're basically saying that if there's
nothing else to consider. What else is there to consider? There's nothing else.
You may want to pump the brakes on the Buster can't do it, so you don't look like a fool on the back end, because you right now, Dieter, you know you're doing this, and you're doing this on purpose. You are creating your opinion before the story, and then when the story actually comes out, then you're going to be like, well, I didn't know it was this story. Yeah, because you didn't wait for the story to give your opinion.
I mean, did the Giants.
But I mean, wouldn't you? Right now, that's all you have to go against is Buster Posey's credibility. I'll take a chance on Buster Posey's credibility over what they've been going with. No,
that's again a mutually exclusive concept. Firing Farhan Zaidi and hiring Buster Posey are two very separate situations.
I'll rip this when it's time to rip it. When Buster hires his son to be the general manager, or somebody who just clearly awful, and empowers them to make decisions, and they make horrible decisions, I'll call it out then and say, you know what? That's a horrible decision. But I'm not going to take one of the most respected guys in the industry, one of the most respected players in the industry,
baseball industry in general, because he's a great player.
Yeah, well, no, he's not just a great player.
Derek Jeter was a great player. He's a shitty GM.
He's one of the all-time great. Yogi Berra got a chance to manage. Why? Because he was a winner. Because he won tons of games as a catcher.
If they were to go Yogiisms are famous for Buster Posey is in, I would have stood up and celebrated, because he'd be a great manager.
But you're ripping Buster, but you don't even know what Buster's move's going to be yet. So that's the thing. What if Buster hires an awesome general manager and an awesome farm director, and they have incredible success?
Yeah.
Then what?
I call it like I see it, which is he's having great success and he's been fantastic. And hey, all of my concerns.
So you're just mad that they haven't done it yet? Is that what it is? That they didn't announce it all at once? Is that what it is? I'm just trying to get to the crux of what your discontent is, because we know you're not discontented with Buster. I know you're not discontented with firing Farhan.
No.
So you're not upset about firing Farhan. You're not upset about hiring Buster.
Well,
You're just upset because they don't have a Buster hasn't made that next move yet that announces a credible GM, and we don't know the end of the story yet. I mean, I'll
can't
take it from here. I know what you're saying.
No,
I don't even think a lot of the things. I don't even disagree with some of the things you're saying. I do agree that it's a little bit easier in basketball and football than it is in baseball. But you're also there's also a lot of people involved.
You've laid it out wonderfully. I'll tell you the exact crux of the issue. Would you hire Buster Posey to be your director of baseball operations if you knew that Jeremy Shelley was going to be the guy actually running the show? I wouldn't. Okay.
I don't want to be that negative on Jeremy Shelley either, because Ned Colletti's a good friend of mine, and Ned Colletti speaks very highly of Jeremy Shelley. And Brian Sabian's a good friend of mine. Brian Sabian speaks very highly of Jeremy Shelley. And I do know that Jeremy Shelley has been at this, Dieter, for I don't know, man. I would say probably 20 years.
I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that you didn't interview a Kim Ang. You didn't go to Cleveland or Tampa.
And what did she win?
She won. She got a playoff series out of the fucking worst run baseball team in the league. I covered the Marlins. I know how poorly they're run. She got a playoff team out of them. So again, I understand that I'm going up.
I guess.
I mean, she's very qualified for the job. She was.
She's been in baseball a long time, but there's not. She doesn't have a World Series ring, does she? Am I missing something here?
There's a lot of guys who have worlds. I mean, fucking Juan Uribe's got a couple of them. I mean, should he be in charge?
Aubrey Huff has a World Series ring.
That's what I'm talking about. How is that a qualification to run a baseball team?
I'm not saying that if you have a World Series ring, you're automatically qualified. But if you don't have one and you've been in baseball a long time, it does kind of say something about you. You've been in baseball for a number of years. You don't have a World Series ring.
Dodgers, and a year later they win the World Series. I mean, was she not any part of that?
I don't know. I mean, you're talking about the in the bubble. I mean, the bubble series that the Dodgers got.
The Dodgers also won.
I'm not saying she has no talent. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying they should have hired her either. I'm saying the fact
we're putting her out there like she's an ideal, and she's never won a ring. That's all I'm saying. And Jeremy Shelley has won 3 rings.
She has been a very critical part of very successful operations, much like Farhan Zaidi was, it should be noted. I'm saying that there were a lot of qualified candidates that would have loved an opportunity to have interviewed for this job to take over for Farhan Zaidi. And this should have been an incredible opportunity to attract very top talent and to have Buster Posey be part of baseball operations where you're bringing in top talent initially with Buster Posey as part of that, as a figurehead, as part of baseball operations, a role that he can carve out on his own because he's part of fucking ownership. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. Okay. Now you have somebody, you go and you get the Braves director of scouting, who's done a wonderful job for years and years and probably deserves an opportunity to go up. You go and you grab him. You pay him director of baseball operations money. You say, we need to build this thing from the bottom up. But they won't now because Buster, I've heard this from too many people. They won't now because Buster is the sheriff, and the sheriff gets to call the shots, and no one is going to want to go and do the job of a director of baseball operations with GM pay, unless they want to overpay on that, which their track record says no, with GM pay. And by the way, none of the recognition or prestige of director of baseball. People want to run their own show if they're getting promoted. Otherwise, they're going to stay in their good plum situation that gets them interviews for stuff like this. What fucking organization is hiring a new CEO and doesn't interview anyone for the job and hires somebody who has no experience as a CEO or anything remotely close? Now, it hasn't even been in C-suite before.
But I mean, in the same conversation, you've said that Buster does want to make the decisions and doesn't want to make the decisions. The external perception
is pretty clear.
He's got
he wants to be a figurehead. But
so he's going to have somebody
before you
underneath him making decisions.
Insulate him. That's my issue. Why don't you have the talent? Why couldn't this have been a very normal process? Is we have a guy who doesn't have the experience here. Let's go out and get the best people to put around him so that we have the best overall team. And instead, they handed it off to Buster and says, you figure it out. You get whoever you can. But he doesn't. The reason you need to insulate him is because he doesn't have the experience to the point That's why you insulate him. And now it's like, well, go find your own insulation. How's he supposed to know how to get it? How's he going to get it? He could pull it off. Absolutely. He's Buster Posey. Apparently he can do anything. But I missed the part of his Wikipedia page where he was born in the manger.
Okay. I mean, I hear you. But at the same time, and it's like I almost have to keep saying this.
No, I hear you. I hear you 100%.
Is that Buster has credibility within the sport, and
There's
I
a lot
think
of credibility in the organization. That's for sure.
and he's got a lot of credibility across the sport with agents and everybody else, players.
Does he?
Oh yeah.
How so?
I mean, Buster Posey is one of the most respected voices.
Everyone's going to take
connected
Buster
to the
Posey's call.
Giants.
Everyone's going to take his call.
It's I mean, just once again, the Niners went with Lynch and Shanahan. Technically, neither of them won a Super Bowl as in the role that they were hired in.
Yeah.
And yet they're doing really, really well. Are they not? Would you say they haven't got the ultimate prize, but they're doing really, really well.
I think it's one of the most effectively run organizations in football. You also got Rand Carthen and Parag Marath. You had a lot of good people already in the system, and perhaps the Giants do as well.
But they've found a way to succeed after those people moved on. I mean, Rand's
because they made great hires. First hire that John Lynch made was Adam Peters.
But I mean, once again, it's like John didn't have experience. Kyle didn't really have any experience. Neither of them had any experience, and they're doing just fine. And Buster doesn't have any experience doing this. And you're right. He could fall on his face, and we don't know who he's going to hire. But you know what? I mean, I guess I can't live in fear. I really can't live in fear because I've just endured what I think is the nightmare scenario. We just had a general manager who said nothing, did nothing.
121 games, Larry. Let me assure you, there is much, much worse than this.
But I mean, not really. Not when you have the kind of revenue and wealth that the Giants have. The Giants have an unbelievable revenue, unbelievable wealth, and great history. And Farhan got nothing done with that. He got lucky one year. The rest of it was 500 and really embarrassing. So it's like, Larry Bear hired him. Now, let's see what Buster does.
Larry sure as shit didn't hire Buster. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, so let's just see what Buster does. And I'm much more worried about the Warriors than I am about the Giants.
I mean,
the Giants are sitting.
That's not to say that I'm not worried about the Warriors too. They have nothing to do with
the Giants are sitting chilly, man. The Giants have their own ballpark. They got all kinds of revenue. They're rich as hell. They're financially of the, let's say how many teams there are in baseball, 30. They're probably like
they're top 5,
5th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. As far as like their position in the game, they're sitting in a great spot. The Warriors, on the other hand, have an owner who talks a big game, who's now got his kids in power seats and basketball operations. He's scared off one general manager, and now he's got another general manager. He's got really high expectations. He's got a really bad, decaying roster and no assets. To me, the Warriors, the Warriors are set for just the biggest downfall of all time. Where the Giants, even though they've been poorly run by Farhan, I still think the Giants are not that far away. I think the Giants are going to be in a much better spot. We'll see. Yeah, we're arguing this. Nobody has the answers. We're all speculating. I would have loved to have seen them say, "Hey, Buster's the general manager, or the head of baseball operations, and we are taking this gem from Baltimore." Or some, Kansas City, Detroit. We're taking this gem of an executive who's proven, and he's coming here. Yep. He's coming here with Buster, and this is the new duo, and we'll decide on Bo Mel, and that's it. I would have liked that too. I would have liked that more as well, but I'm not going to. To me, the first reaction with what Buster has given Giants fans, I think has to be one of trust. Otherwise, I think that's overtly negative because he's accomplished so much. So if we don't want to, he could fuck it up. But
of course, anyone could.
I don't have. I'd rather hand him. I'd rather hand him the keys.
I'll say this and I'll close. All I've heard on why Buster will do a great job is because, and I've listened to everybody. I've been bashed left, right, and center. That's fine. All I've heard is, well, he has a great temperament. He's a great guy. He's a winner. I'm hearing, he cares so much about the community and the team. You know who cares about the community and the team more than anyone I know? the people who call in 808 KMBR, let's put them in charge. You know, if it's just about caring, if it was about smarts, Farhan Zaidi would have been gangbusters. He's one of the smartest men I've ever met. If it was just about being a great person, well, Buster's certainly very, very high on that list. There's a lot of really great people out there, a lot of great philanthropists. We can put them in charge. If it's just about really caring about the team, let the fans run the show. None of the qualities that have yet been described are directly applicable to being successful as a director of baseball operations in any capacity that I know of. And now Buster Posey has an opportunity to define the role as he sees fit. As well he should. He is part owner of the team after all. But if I'm somebody from the outside and I'm now going to effectively do that job, Buster Posey's hiring me to do that job. Again, you're offering me the number 2 role to do the number 1 work under somebody who cannot be fired and who will always get the credit for any success. And I'm going to think twice about that. Now, had I felt like I was coming in on equal footing or there was a direct partnership because we worked this out before we went and talked to the media, that might be a different dynamic. I'd feel good about it. But right now what the Giants are selling is Buster is the grand poobah, and Buster is like, I'd like someone else to actually make all the decisions. And the incongruency there, the juxtaposition of those two things reeks to me. And it seems to me as if the Giants made a decision strictly on PR, and that's not any way to run a baseball team. I'll leave it at that.
It's fair. It's fair. I mean, their PR has been bad, you know, so you can't fault them if they really do want to get on the good side of PR. But
they won.
You know,
they
you
won
don't
that
win with PR. You don't win.
They won, except with Dieter Kurtenbach, and I might look like the big asshole out of all this. Fair enough.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. You take a strong stand. I don't agree with you on this one, but you know what? It's all good stuff.
There, I'll tell you this. Not a lot of people have been convinced lately by me. So
that's all right. That's all right. That's why you're good, dude, is because you take a stand and you lay it out there. And I'm
very happy.
Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but you take a stand. So that's good. Because a lot of people don't.
I would love to get information that would change my stance on this, because it is not a very fun hill to be on right now.
I hear you. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueger Show. Thanks to Better for the live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krueger Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to Dieter. Dieter, have a great night, man. When do you appear next on the leader?
Probably never after this Buster Posey thing.
Yeah,
that's why I'm staying in here. Maybe if I just hang around long enough, they'll forget.
That does it for us. Have a great night, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for checking out the Krueger Show on YouTube.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.